Welcome to Very Honored Frater BT's Esoterinerd podcast, episode 107, in which I interview my good friend, Joseph Zabinski. Joe has just written a book. Actually, he translated the Mytho-Hermetic Dictionary. So for those of you who, always wished that this was available in English, and if you're studying any kind of alchemical text, you're just getting into something, maybe you watched Harry Potter and they used an unfamiliar word, you can look it up in here, and is more information than you could ever possibly need as far as alchemical terms, which is very useful if you're interested in alchemical texts. Would you like to introduce yourself?
First, let me see. Yeah, my name is Priyal. Priyal is the nickname. Priyal is my name. Priyal Manjari. Frater BT is my husband. It was like I saw myself walking through a tunnel. It's an underground tunnel, both side torchlight, old-timey, ancient looking, and it was red color. That color inside the tunnel was red, and these flames, a torchlight with flames. And then I was walking, and I was feeling a little bit scared, but my heart was full of like compassion. I was feeling bad for all the painful sounds I was hearing, screams of people, and it was weird. They wanted to touch me to feel better. There was a woman standing on the other side of the tunnel, and she was wearing all black, and she was, I remember her skin. She was an old woman, and she told me that if you really want to get initiated, if you're ready for this, then step on this and come this side, and are you ready? Then only. I said yes, and then I went to the other side, and she told me to eat a piece of raw meat. It was pink raw meat, and she told me to eat it. It was on a leaf, and I took it, and and there was a big tree, and there was a white light coming from above, like a moonlight. And it was that. It was, whole dream was very, very intense, and strange initiation in dream.
Greetings, Frater. Welcome to the Esoterinerd podcast. How have you been?
Yeah, it's great to see you.
It's great to see you too.
Yeah, I've been great. I've been wonderful. How have you been?
Oh, good. I mean, great. Yeah, it's been a long time. I think it's been 16. No. The last time we spoke, I asked you to be on the Esoterinerd podcast. So that must have been 5 years, 6 years ago, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
And then the time before that was 16 years ago.
Right. Time is a strange beast, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you remember meeting me?
Do I remember meeting you?
I was thinking about it, and I don't remember meeting you, but I remember before I knew you, and I remember knowing you, but I don't remember meeting you.
Yeah.
When was the first time you came out to California at the old warehouse space?
I don't. So the first time that I was there, the first time that I was there, it must have been like 1999, maybe 2000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And a mutual friend of ours, Nancy, was the first person that I met there.
Yeah.
And you know what? The thing that I remember the most about that trip was her description of the Rose Parade.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, out of all the stuff, I flew down from Alaska to California, and the Rose Parade was the thing that stuck.
Yeah.
I think it might have been like trip number 4 or 5 before before you and I met. Yeah.
Yeah. How interesting.
Yeah. And like we were like I think that we were a more obscure presence in each other's lives before that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like through email or through word of mouth or through like just secondhand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then at a certain point, we started talking, and I remember talking like before rituals and you know, outside and after and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I love your mind. You have a very
Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
I love your mind too. I think the thing that, you know what, I was just thinking about this the other day. The thing that has most consistently been there in our relationship is like you've always been this like gentle and neutral sort of ambassador for both my ideas and your ideas. You know, like I feel like that's one of your talents, Edward, is that you bring out this, you just tease things along, and you explore thoughts themselves and ideas themselves, you know. Yeah, it's it's such like an abstract thing to say, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that you're a wonderful philosopher, and you're a good friend, you know, and that you bring that out.
Thank you. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, we were talking about, we had a very interesting conversation. I want to see if we can sort of lay it out and maybe talk around it and within it for the viewers, because I think it's you know, not useless. I mean, maybe it's a little bit kind of like abstract. It doesn't have any solid answers that we can implement today, but it's more of on a meta kind of level. We were talking about the polarization, especially in the United States, but elsewhere in the world, usually it's between kind of the you know, ultra nationalistic and then the progressive in whether it be Pakistan or India or US. And then polarization, especially within the progressive, you know, where the progressives, you know, seem to divide amongst themselves between the uber progressives and then the middle progressives and then the centrist progressives, and then they all kind of hate each other. It's weird.
Yeah.
Where on the right, you know, the people who are on the extreme can get along all right with the people who are more centrist, you know, maybe there's more homogeneity in that. But we were talking more abstractly about polarization and the idea of, because we were talking, I think you were asking me something and I was talking about how it's different in America, or looking at American politics, especially prior to Biden, when everything was heating up and nobody could, you know, look at any direction without hearing about, you know, the Darth Cheeto. So the polarization, and then I brought up Zoroastrianism and the floor of the vault and the Jungian shadow side, and you were like, wow, that conversation took a left turn. And so I was saying, no, I mean, as far as culturally how we deal with the idea of the other, the idea of the unknown, the idea of the shadow, the idea of evil itself, and the programming that gets you know, passed down, either whether if someone's going to Bible camp as they're growing up, or if they, you know, had a grandmother or a great grandmother, and some of these sort of puritanical ideas sort of filtered through unnoticed. And so people end up being us versus them about what, yoga and being vegan or something. And instead of like, you know, Jesus is the way, it's, you know, Deepak Chopra is the way or something, Oprah is the way. I don't know. And then the alternatives to that and what exactly that is, and getting back behind that, because most people kind of take for granted that there's heaven and hell, there's good and evil, there's black and white checkers on the floor, right?
Right. Yeah. And there's this, but I mean, to me, You know, I'm glad that you brought up the floor, because the floor can be interpreted so many different ways, right? Because I mean, so first there's this, you know, and we've been talking about it so far in terms of this sort of like political exclusivity, right? Where if you're white, then you're white, and if you're black, then you're black. I'm talking about the black and white floor here,
right?
The checkers, right?
Yeah.
And there's no
Great.
there's no like blending of the two, right?
Yeah.
Just you have these checkers that are very carefully laid out on the floor, right? But and there's and by the way, pairs, right?
I'm sorry,
so
I lost you for a
everything
second.
is at these like masculine. Oh, I said everything is in squares.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Did that come through?
Yeah.
Okay, so like everything's at these masculine right angles, right? And it comes from it comes from masonry, right? Like when you look at Masonic rituals, it's like everything is ultra rigid, right? Like everything is, even when people are walking around in the temple. If you've ever been to a Masonic ceremony, you'll see like when they exactly like clockwork, they're moving around, right? And there's this like mechanistic philosophy to it. But you could see the floor as this expression of division, right? Or you could just see the floor as sort of a blending, right? Because if they wanted, if the people who made the floor wanted to, if they wanted to say one thing or the other, they would have made the floor like just black or just white. Yeah. Right. They would have made the floor all one color, and it's not. It's both the colors at the same time. Right. And to me, the floor is sort of this, it's a blending of extremes. And it's letting both of the extremes exist in the same space, right? And you're standing on this floor, like this is the foundation of a lot of occult philosophy, right? And to me, it's this like you're standing on the integration of the two, and the thing is but it goes really deep, because because you're standing on the floor, right? So the floor is two dimensions. You are the third dimension that is rising from
like the cave, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so you are the integration of these two extremes. You are the integration of this stuff. And so
and with the red socks, then it's like the third point sort of above, unrelated to white or black. It's a third completely different thing. That's the gold that comes after the processes that go on in the black and white, in that sense.
Right. Yeah. And now you're getting into like the alchemical symbolism of the floor, right? Where like you have the black and white work like embedded in the floor itself.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You have the black and white work in the floor itself, and then you're the red work. You're coming up from this, right? But there's to me there's profound implications there, because what it's saying is that you as a human being are in a unique position, right? You're in a unique position to sort of surf the good and the evil, if you dare, right? Yeah. To take these two polarizations of culture and bring them together into like a living folklore of the magic of human beings. Yeah. Thomas and the Wolf.
My new book. Sorry. It's where I took the two extremes and I brought them together as you were describing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Sort of. But yeah. So the polarization, but then, so as a magician, we always talk about it in Golden Dawn. As a magician, we do these things. We rise up from the polarity. But the problem with the ping pong in the among the exoteric, the masses, as it were, is that they think that they're good and the other side is evil. And and obviously, like in after World War II, everybody was so high on that drug called "we're right and they're wrong," and we were right and they were wrong, but we also were wrong, in our own ways. But then then Superman and all that kind of came out of, well, he was before the war, right? I'm not a big comic book guy, but I have my new comic book shelf. I'm working on it. But anyway, I started with Watchmen, though. I skipped a lot. So like, speaking of Watchmen, that's like culturally, we're starting to play with these archetypes and explore the dark side of the hero and the light and the good side of the villain. And sometimes you think who you think that is the hero is the villain, and vice versa. And I think that's constructive. Sometimes the hero is the hero. I mean, that's something that hasn't been. It's not off the table for the hero to be the hero. It's just sometimes he's not. So that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So, but everybody thinks they're the hero.
I mean,
it's like the old one, the French and the British.
Right. Everybody exactly
fighting each other in the name of God, and dear Jesus, help me slay the satanic British or French, or whatever.
Right. Or satanic insert
whatever. Yeah. And if there was a religious difference, then it could get real weird, and people thinking, oh, those other religion, that kind of thing, especially in Europe.
Right. Yeah. This just makes me think about how, like, so even in our understanding of spirits, we bring the same polarization there, right? And
right.
But
who
and
do you
like
serve?
exactly. And we just like we were talking about the floor before, we're in a unique position as magicians, right? Because we have because when you come on the scene, right, like when you're first usually, like when you're first introduced to magic, like there's already like well-established folklore here. There's already well-established characters, right? You have I mean, and some of these first characters that you meet will they run the gamut, right? If you're like a classic Western magician type person, then you're going to meet angels, right? Those are going to be some of your first characters,
right?
And you're going to meet, and you're going to meet devils, and usually, like, you'll meet. But the thing is, and to me, like, this is like a crucial thing, is that you also just meet spirits, right? Like things that don't really fit into any particular place, right? So, and those spirits can sort of sometimes they're like, well, they're members of the dead, or they're saints, or they're whatever. But sometimes you run into these spirits that are just spirits. They haven't been polarized yet. We don't know really like what their motivations are, or what their agenda is, right? But what I'm getting at is that as a magician, you're in a unique position, because you're in the position to allow these characters that have been polarized for whatever reason, right? Whether it's actually polarized or not,
right?
You're in a position to let them do new things, right? To let them do something that they're not, that their folklore does not present. You're in a position to build new folklore with these spirits, and so you're in a position to start to integrate this polarization, really like in a unique way, because like you're also sort of in this position with human beings, but human beings are so much more
complex,
stubborn, and retractable. Right?
Most of them are bad guys when you get to know them. Well, I guess maybe the jury's out on that one. Like no one's actually gone around with all 8 billion of them and said, give them the test. It seems like it. It seems people are nice though.
I remember watching this. What was that?
Oh, people are nice generally. It depends on where you go and kind of what the weather's like. If the weather's really crappy, people are grouchy. It's just sort of a mixed bag, like the floor, like the black and white tiles. It's a mixed bag.
Yes, right. Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess maybe that's the best way to understand people, right? They're a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Making the good candidates for initiation.
Right. And the vault, I talk about the vault on here. I hope you don't mind. I've given myself.
No, I don't mind.
Okay. The floor of the vault is in a way reminiscent of the floor of the Golden Dawn Temple, but instead of black and white tile, it has the symbol of Yeshua and then the symbol of Leviathan, basically, the various forms of evil. And so, but the rest of the vaults, I mean, the squares are pretty neutral. You could use Venus of Mars for good or evil, it's like a hammer. But then when you get to the ceiling, I don't know if the word is good anymore. Maybe in the biblical sense, God is good, but it's transcended the dualities of the floor and even of the walls at that point. I think. Although there are still
there's like. There's a secret in the floor. I mean, it's not really a secret. It's like, well, it's a secret that's written very plainly, right? And it's that it's the Yeshua and the Leviathan on the floor together, right? Because like you said before, when you have the black and white tiles in the outer, and that's sort of the that's what it's like when you first come on the scene, right? But as the inner Christ is seated and grows, then once you get to the vault, things have changed. Things are different. Things are more integrated together now, right? That red work has continued.
Yeah.
And just talking about it now, like I'm starting to realize, like there's a real. I never really noticed this before, but there's this sort of inward journey going on, right? Where and that journey, like it involves everybody, right? That journey, it involves the temple, it involves the people who are administering the temple, it involves the candidates themselves. Everybody is working together to make this thing happen. It's this where when a candidate first shows up for initiation, they're everything is more polarized, right? And but everything's been set up so that the red work can start.
Yeah.
And in a way, to me, like it starts with 0-0, right? It starts with neophyte, and then where and I mean it's totally, you can see it's everywhere in neophyte, right? All this polarization, all this like the red, the fire that lives in the south, and then
but it's all about reconciling. And then the speech of the Ma'at is speech of the hegemon at equinox. They're all about, I am the reconciler between them, and one reconciler between them. And so as a son of just keep your thought. You remember your thought, put a pin in it? Yeah. So as a son of divorced parents, I always felt like, my mom hated my dad in me. My dad hated my mom in me. And so I resonated with that. As a teenager, I joined the Golden Dawn. And, first I was doing Wicca, and it was like earth and air and fire and water bind us to you. It's very nice. But then we get to Golden Dawn, and it's like, there are two opposing forces and you must be the reconciler. And I'm like, hell yeah, so I'm trying to reconcile Palestine and Israel. I'm trying to reconcile, Nazis with, left tubers, and all of that. It's like a compulsion. But I don't know if I'm missing the point.
No, yes and no. So I mean that totally is the point, that reconciliation is really,
I guess by trying to do it out
everything.
here, that was what they were complaining about back in the day when we were all focused on healing Jerusalem. And people were like, you guys are going to heal Jerusalem? Aren't you kind of fucked up yourselves? You know, like maybe you should work out your own issues first. And, you know, but we were like, nope, we have no issues. Jerusalem, we're going to heal Jerusalem, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that
like being a proctor before you've actually gone through your own alchemy. That was another thing that often happened. Just to keep the wheels turning, you keep the marketing, keep cranking out flyers, you know, like, okay, you're a proctor, you're a proctor. You know?
Yeah, remember that? Wow, this is awesome. I didn't I guess like coming into this, I didn't really know what we were going to talk about.
Well,
like,
the people who know what we're talking about will know what we're talking about, and the other people will be like, oh, they must have been in some kind of group together. That's fine.
Yes, we were.
Yeah, I don't say the name of it or, you know, that kind of thing.
There was a business end of it, and there was a family end of it, and there was a
sort of
what I will describe as like an initiation end of it.
Yeah.
You know? There were a lot of different pieces of it.
But then there was a Wizard of Oz thing when you get to the end where you find out that the holy man laying in the vault, you know, that represents your higher self is, well, anyway, is the wizard, you know, that pay no attention to that man behind the curtain with the inappropriately with the sword, you know, or whatever he's doing. But enough about that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean that's an interesting topic in itself because you know, we were just talking about polarization. There's your polarization right there.
Right. I got pretty polarized.
You know, and there was yeah, it did get pretty polarized. Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking more about the point that you brought up that work to fix the outer. You know, we were working to fix the outer, and there were glaring problems in the inner.
Yeah.
But did that mean that the work with the outer wasn't successful? Did that mean it was like sort of doomed to failure because you have to have everything straight inside before you can get things straight outside? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there.
I think our scriptures talk about, I mean, by our scriptures, I'm talking about the Western mind, kind of loosely speaking, like the Christian scriptures, Paul and shit, you know, the church has to be fucking perfect, you know, or Jesus is going to come down and throw a sword at you out of his mouth and expose your dirty laundry in front of everybody. And that's sort of the unconsciously held assumption that we have. I think probably because it started with a man, you know, criticizing the established religious organization at the time that was in power in his region. So then when it became the Catholic Church, it's really a bizarre thing to look at. Actually, historically, it's like there's different phases. When you get to the self-aware, ironic, meta commentary in the scripture about the religion that you're doing, that's Christianity. that was what that was. then yes, now it's spun, you know. And so when people come up with new cults, it's with all of that cultural experience kind of assumed and you know, and then it's a different thing in India. Like you know, there was a woman who was an Osho follower, and she decided she didn't like him. He was a fraud, you know. So she went out and started her own thing and said, "Come learn how to raise the Kundalini from me." And she got thousands of followers, and they worship at her feet. And then she died, and they have big portraits of her feet, and people will gather together and have feasts and talk and play music and look at the picture of this woman's feet, you know. And it was funny. I went to this place. I was there, and they were talking about the haunted house next door. And I said to a friend of mine, I was like, actually, I think this is the haunted place, the place that's full of all these people. You know, like what's going on here? You know, but I won't say too much about that. They might be actually watching this. It was nice. It was fun. It was very interesting. I don't mean to disrespect other people's culture. Anyway, but yeah, in the Western mind, yeah, we want our golden dawns to be the one holy and true church that the Catholic Church never was, or the Jerusalem in chapter 22 of the Book of Revelation, as opposed to the Jerusalem that we got. You know, whether talking about today or in the past or probably the future. So people get hung up on an ideal, then the thing doesn't live up to the ideal, then they're disappointed and they do drugs. And that seems to be the rut that we're in, you know, like as a culture.
Yeah. I was just, it's funny you bring this up. This just came up yesterday that there's an ideal, and we're working towards the ideal, and there's this idea that we're not there yet, right? And that we constantly have to strive to get there, right? And so we realign ourselves to the ideal. But I'm starting to think, or I'm starting to suspect that this ideal that we're after, well, what exactly is it? It's our understanding of how things are supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right. But were you placed here to have an understanding of the way things are supposed to be, and to make this place conform to what you understand it to be? Or is your ideal fundamentally flawed because you only have limited content?
Yeah.
Right. And that in fact, the world that you're living in right now is the ideal already. And you have to conform, you have to change yourself, right? So it's not really a question of enforcement, it's a question of forgiveness. Where you have to forgive, where you have to learn how to forgive the world for not being the thing that in your ignorance you believe that it was supposed to be. Right? And you have to learn how to forgive yourself for not being the ideal that in your ignorance you thought yourself to be. Right? I think that like ideals are very much celebrated, and ignorance is and not ignorance, mysteries are not enough celebrated. Right? Why is all this happening? We don't know. And that's a wonderful, beautiful, and sacred thing that we sort of throw in the trash a lot, when we say, no, we know how this is supposed to be. This is supposed to be like Revelation 22. So we're going to make this just like Revelation 22.
Right.
Oh, it didn't,
Isn't it
didn't
a
work
Borg
out.
cube? It describes a Borg cube, except it's made of gold.
And then when Revelation 22 doesn't work out, then it's a wonder, it's a crazy and wonderful thing to see, because it's like, oh, Revelation 22 didn't work out. So now there's this disaster, right? Because everybody's in psychological crisis. Because
we'll write a new book.
We'll
call it the Book of Mormon. Yeah.
Right. So that didn't work out. And so like everybody like splinters out, and they like try to find a new ideal. They're like, oh, wait, this ideal thing does not need to be questioned, but Revelation 22, we were wrong about that. It's actually Buddhism.
Right.
Buddhism is actually
my Buddhist shelf.
Exactly. Right. So get the Nag Champa burning, because we're going to be Buddhist, because that's the true ideal, you know. Yeah. And then it just keeps going and going and going and going.
Yeah.
And like,
vegan yoga,
you come apart and you're splintered again. You come apart. You're put together and you're splintered again. Put together, splintered again.
Yeah. And whenever a new movement gains enough momentum, then some creep finds a way to get himself at the top of some hierarchy of power and turn it all into shit. Talking about Tibetan Buddhism in America with Shambhalaya, and talking about whatever else, yoga, Bikram, all this stuff. I don't want to name too many names.
Yeah, there's always, it always happens. What's funny is it always happens. And if there's a devil to be seen here, if there's a devil with a contract, it's usually like somebody that shows up that's like sort of the avatar for this ideal, right? And they have something shiny to offer you, and they're on your side because they want the same thing that you do, right? And
you should tell all your friends.
Right. And so exactly. And so there's this like, and so like clarity ensues after that.
Yeah, and that happens with churches too, or I don't know. Yeah. So what other topics? I think we did the polarization. We didn't solve anything, but I think we clarified to a certain extent.
Well, I think so. I've been thinking about that, how to so if you realize that sort of like the jig is up, and that even if even if you're a classic Golden Dawn magician, the point is not to polarize, the point is to reconcile, right? And if you understand that the perspective is one of reconciliation, and that is the fundamental perspective from which your spiritual practice needs to develop, right?
The ego can, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, there ends up being a polarization between people who insist that they're integrated and reconciled, or they insist that they're on the side of reconciliation against those other bastards that are on the side of polarization. And
right, yeah. I guess I'm just talking about like how to apply the principles of reconciliation to your spiritual practice.
Right.
Yeah,
and maybe what the order of priorities is,
because
that should be before politics, like John Lennon says, before you try to change the world, maybe you should change your mind instead, like that.
Right. Yeah. And so because I think that this is like, even for Golden Dawners, like this is somewhat unexplored territory. Because so many of our rituals are if you look at them on the surface, they're still polarized.
Yeah.
Right. Like take the LBRP, for instance. I mean, or
the Tower Card initiation. It's very polarized. We don't like those Edomites. Those Edomite fuckers.
Right.
Yeah. My God, we got to kill those Edomites.
We got to smite them.
They are evil itself. Yeah.
Right. And what's funny is the story wasn't, the interesting thing is that the attitude is always like we have to smite them because we're doing God's job.
Right.
But there's a blasphemy there, right? God doesn't need you to do his job to do his smiting. God doesn't need someone else to doing any jobs. Like God's doing just fine, like all by himself. And it's interesting. I don't want to, because I don't want to say like God does not inspire you to do things, because that does happen, but at the same time, I feel like there's a hubris there. Right?
I think that people too often, when something resonates with their cognitive bias, then they call it intuition, or they call it divine inspiration or something. So
yeah, and that's like a super important point. I don't know where I picked this up, but I figured it out somewhere, that inspiration is always weird.
I like it.
You don't see it coming, and if it doesn't make sense, it's more likely to be genuine. Right. Because I mean, like people are smart. Like they have a vast unconscious within them, right? That's constantly putting things together and constantly figuring things out. And in fact, like you can live a very enlightened life just listening to your dreams, just listening to yourself, just like writing things, just journaling and building a relationship with your unconscious. Your unconscious is a very powerful spirit all by itself. Inspiration, something coming from the outside, or either from the outside, deeper in your unconscious. I don't know what the answer is there, but when it's inspired, it's coming from sort of outside your personality. Yeah. And so it's strange. So when it's weird, it's more likely to be coming from the deeps.
Isn't there an old Norse word, weird?
Yeah.
What
I
is
love
that?
Norse words.
Yeah. I've been meaning
There's
to...
the weird, something within me tells me it has something to do with the doom.
I'll have to look that up.
So I don't know if it's I'm speaking in very like general 90s terms, and I'm not a Norse
That's all right.
scholar. So yeah, but there's this idea of the doom, this idea of inexorable fate. And that's a it's a very important part of, I mean, it sort of goes into different things, but it's this like this fundamentally important part of occultism, or of Maya, I guess I should say, like of Maya occultism. This idea of the inexorable fate, because if you can discover, so if fate were real, right? If fate is part of reality, if it's part of the real world, then if you can develop a relationship with fate, then you're in a very powerful position, because you can know what's going to happen before it happens. And the thing is, like, it seems like you're in a, I should amend that. It seems like you're in a powerful position on the surface. Right? If fate exists and if you know the future, then it seems like a great thing to do, right? But once you actually start to know the future, you start to understand that you have nothing to do with it. You are just as much a player in this future as anyone, I should say.
Yeah.
And so when and so like, as you actually understand the future, you understand that you have no power to change the future. It's just coming, whether you want it to or not. Yeah. And like, and in that sense, forgiveness becomes way more important. Because when you see a future for yourself coming that may be dark, or maybe something that you find morally abhorrent, forgiving yourself for those, you gain the power to forgive yourself ahead of time. Well, sorry, I went off on a rant there. And
no, it's interesting.
It was a dark
very
rant.
Interesting. It reminded me, someone said somewhere in Catholicism, there's the unforgivable sin of saying, I am going to sin, and then afterward, I'm going to repent and be saved. Right. That's an unforgivable sin.
Because you knew it was coming and you did it anyway.
But it's like, okay, if you just cut the subject and make it the direct object, then it's fine. It's fate. Oh, I guess that's what Calvinism is, isn't it?
I had a yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about this.
Yeah, okay.
So what part of my practice nowadays is I work with saints a lot. And there was this one particular saint that was someone attempted to assault her, right? And they simply could not. They tried everything that they could, and they just couldn't do it. And it was this power that this saint had that it didn't make her a saint, but it made many converts, that people just weren't able to do things to the saint. And so I asked her, what's that?
Saint Catherine?
It was Saint Justina.
Justina, okay.
Yeah. So I asked Saint Justina, how did you do that? Because it's not really described like how exact. I mean, like, a lot of the time with saints, people just assume like, well, they prayed and then everything was fine, right? And that's true.
If it was stage magic, then how did you do it? Or which god did you pray to? I mean,
so just like from a magician's perspective, it's great to go to saints and ask them how they do things, because they have a very slightly different perspective, but it's usually very instructive, right? And so I asked Saint Justina how she went about this, and she said, I forgave them. That's all I did. Her power of forgiveness was such that the reason why forgiveness worked for her was because what these other people were trying to do was a sin. She forgave the sin so completely that they could no longer perform the sin.
Oh, so they just weren't able to do it. Like they would want to hit her, but then they just couldn't.
They just couldn't do it. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I can imagine that. Yeah, like someone who's, like in a situation where someone's coming to attack them, but they just look at them with just a smile, just kind of just such a genuine from the heart, and that the person's like like they're expecting them to go right. Or something, or like something to kind of make it a fight,
Right. Yeah. But that's sort of true. Like I don't know if you've ever been in the sort of situation where a fight could have happened. But I've seen it happen before, where like somebody wants to punch somebody else, but they can't, because they're not in the sort of culture where they are allowed to punch. Does that make sense? And so like if they're if they're treated with enough generosity, and if they're treated with enough kindness, if you basically act like their mom, then they won't hit, because they are not in a culture where they can hit. Right. They couldn't forgive themselves if they did. That's basically the trick of it.
Yeah, I was joking with Pew, because of course they had the British occupation times here, so they have a very unique perspective on British culture. And being an American, even though it's very similar, I'm outside of that, so that's nice. I think if I had been British, we wouldn't be together. But so yeah, I was joking about how the British are aggressively polite. Like you have to be polite. I mean, not everybody. There's the people at the pub, of course, but like generally speaking, like middle class and so on. But yeah, and then what was the other thing that popped into my head when we were talking? Oh, I hate it when that happens. Oh well, anyway. Like it's the whole civilized animal thing, the spiritual beast. We still have those every little animal instincts. I mean, of course we need it to survive. If we didn't have hunger and jealousy and all of these things and lust, and there wouldn't be any humans. That's how you exist in this this
that
world.
brings up something I wanted to say before. There was I was watching this documentary about ayahuasca ceremonies, and this guy said something in it that's stuck with me ever since. He said human beings are demons that do good. I mean, isn't that great?
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's this like it's embracing both this animalistic nature and the moral capability of human beings.
Oh, something you said earlier reminded me of Dogen, Shobogenzo, the Zen guy. Since I got my books here, I might as well plug books. I recommend this. And there's 4 volumes. Anyway,
I was just going to ask.
Yeah. He was going to say, or he said at one point that some of the greatest masters in Buddhism never read a sutra, never heard a sutra, but they learned how to read the sutra in the river and in the leaves and in the wind. And just by observing, they received all of the wisdom. So yeah, I mean, that's that kind of thing, like you were talking about. I forget what you were talking about, but it reminded me of that. That some people don't need.
It's a more. I feel like after a while, you and I just start to riff.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it. It becomes like this artistic, it just becomes an artistic presentation, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Dogen, I told this story on the Esoterinerd recently. I'm just trying to think if I'm going to bore my audience. I won't go too deep into it. Okay, Dogen, when he was little, he was Pure Land Buddhist. Pure Land Buddhist, at least that particular, to oversimplify, vastly oversimplify. They believe that if they chant to Amitabha, the red Buddha in the East, every day. Is he in the East? Have I got it? He's in the West, but he's red. Then they'll go to the Pure Land after they die. And the Pure Land is sort of like, the Pure Land is to heaven what purgatory is to hell, kind of.
Okay.
It's like it's a place where you can meditate in peace without bugs bothering you, or like people doing evil things, or temptation. You can just meditate until you attain nirvana, and everything's really beautiful, and there's gods and goddesses and stuff. Basically, again, I'm oversimplifying. So Dogen grew up in this, and his mom died, I think, when he was 7 years old, or maybe 9. And so he was asking the monks at his temple, where's my mom? And they said, well, did she pray her Amitabha every day? And he said, yes. And they said, then she's in the Pure Land. And he says, well, what if she forgot? And they were like, well, hopefully she's in the Pure Land, and so he wasn't getting any good answers. So that was his impetus, his sort of like, I was mentioning about trying to reconcile my parents. That was his sort of child sort of trauma that motivated him to seek and seek and seek and not give up until he found a true master that he could question, and the person wouldn't just be repeating something he memorized. He wouldn't be BSing, and he wouldn't be saying, well, that's for you to go meditate on that. So he searched, he got in a boat, he went from Japan to China, he went to like the big imperial accepted Buddhist place, and he asked them, there was a picture of the moon, and the moon reflected in water, and there was a monk there. And he said, can you tell me about the moon reflected in the water? And Dogen, when he's telling the story, he's just talking to his congregation. I mean, to the monks. Someone's writing down, scribe back there. So he calls this monk a useless bag of skin. That in this place was filled with useless bags of skin dressed as monks. He just had nothing to say at all. He was like quoting some proverb or something somebody said about the moon reflected in water. And then Dogen proceeds to rant about how the moon reflected in water is the nature of our existence and our experience. It's both present and not present, real and unreal, and he's breaking it down really well. He was the guy who talked a lot. It's funny because he started Zen. I mean, he brought Zen. To cut short, he found Chan in China, and he stayed there for a few years, and he learned from a great master, and then he came back to Japan, but they had an accent, so they called it Zen. So that was the beginning of Zen in Japan. And people think, oh, Zen, no talking, just silence. But then who's the guy that founded Zen? The guy who talked a lot. He's like got 4 volumes of him talking. And one of his speeches was called like thorny grapevines, like interwoven grapevines. And that's like a term that means it refers to people who think too much and talk too much. And it also, after Dogen, has become a term to describe Dogen. So I'm a big fan, the guy who talked too much, that was the founder of the Church of Not Talking Too Much. It's like, that sounds like me. It sounds like something I might have done in former life. So that's fun.
Would you say that Shobogenzo, is that right?
Shobogenzo.
Shobogenzo. Would you say that reading and working with Shobogenzo is a good place to start with Buddhism? Or with Zen,
yes,
I should say.
I would say with Buddhism too, because here, this is cool. Yeah, I can show you. Over here on the far left, we have the oldest, but except for maybe some Pali Sutras, this is like the Dhammapada. Now this is Theravada, which is commonly known as Hinayana. Hinayana is a little bit like a slur, because Mahayana, they call themselves the great vehicle, not the small vehicle, you know. But the Hinayana people are like, could you not call us that? You know, we're the Theravada school, and by the way, the original school, and you guys are making shit up, you know. So like, so yeah. Anyway, so that's the beginning of it, and then you have the Lotus Sutra, and you know the development of the Madhyamaka school, which is when a lot of people think of Buddhism, they're thinking Madhyamaka. That's where they're talking about, is existence or non-existence? And do you exist when you don't exist, or do you not exist when you, and then arguing about that. And then a new school forms of Madhyamaka, all these different schools of Madhyamaka. And one of the schools of Madhyamaka slowly evolved and then kind of merged with the tantric practices that were popular in the 5th and 6th centuries in Hinduism, and so then there was Mahayana, Madhyamakas that were there was like a split, and then one branch became the main Madhyamaka school, and the other branch kind of fizzled out, except that it was the foundation for Vajrayana Buddhism. And then that Vajrayana Buddhism mixed with Chan, which I mentioned earlier, a little, and there was like a backflow from China. So a little bit of Taoism mixed with a little bit of Yogacara, which is one of my favorites. There's so little written about Yogacara. They were Buddhists that were using yoga as their means of attaining enlightenment. And I'm like, yeah, you know, where are those guys? Where's the book on that? Nope, it happened. It influenced other schools. So,
wow.
So Zen, they basically took the idea of using yoga to attain enlightenment and just stuck with meditation pose. Like none, you know, nothing else from yoga, but some of the yogic philosophy kind of filtered through. But the idea of dhyana, meditation, as the central core practice of Zen Buddhism. Anyway, so Vajrayana, they mixed a lot of other elements and kind of made it very complex and colorful. And I kind of like that. My dad was into that, so I have sort of a sentimental fondness for that, which is the opposite of Buddhist philosophy, where you let go of sentimental fondnesses. And so I acknowledge this silly contradiction and harmonic dissonance. Anyway, so yeah, but what happened? So then Tibetan Buddhism, and then Japanese Buddhism. Okay, real quick, I promise, real quick. So Vimalamitra, who's in there, you know, anyway, he and Padmasambhava came from India. Padmasambhava was from present-day Pakistan. So when people think of Tibetan Buddhism, and if they know a little bit, they know Padmasambhava. Padmasambhava, he's Tibetan. No, he's Pakistani, actually. Well, by today's terms. But he traveled, and Vimalamitra and some others traveled, and then they translated the Vajrayana Sutras into Tibetan. Thank goodness, because a few hundred years later, the Mughals came and in the name of Islam, burned all the Vajrayana Sutras in India. So thank God that those guys brought it to Tibet, right? So sure. Basically looking at Tibetan Buddhism is looking at pre-Mughal popular Buddhist culture in India. It's like what was going on in the 600s and 700s there's one or two main cities in India, but now it's all but gone, except for the fact that China did its thing, and then the Dalai Lama had to leave and come into Tibet. I mean, into India. So in the end, right, Vajrayana Buddhism left India and then came back, and it took you know 1,000 years. So interesting. What am I talking about? Okay, so then Kukai. Okay, did I talk about this last time? God, I hope I didn't. Kukai, he grew up with Bodhisena. Bodhisena was an Indian scholar who was in China at one point, and someone was impressed by him from the Japanese imperial court, and they said, "Hey, could you come and be our Krishna Ramakrishna, like in the Theosophical Society?" And he said, "I don't get that reference because time flows this way." And they said, "Oh," and then anyway, they said, "Could you come be our Buddhist saint? You know, like our genuine, you know." Like they were, you know, because he was Indian and he was familiar with scripture, you know, and he was a scholar. So they said, that makes you a holy man and a bodhisattva. Come with us. And so he actually helped them develop the Japanese language based on Sanskrit, the Japanese alphabet, I should say, the one that has 47 some odd letters. And then so there was a young monk hanging around that was sort of like watching all of these things going on, and his name was Kukai. And then eventually, after the form of Buddhism that got established in Nauru under Bodhisattva and with the emperor, that kind of the imperial accepted thing, Kukai took off and went to China, and then I think he met Vimalamitra because of the timing. So basically, he went to China right when Vimalamitra was coming into China, and he received the Vajrayana Sutras and brought them back to Japan, right at the same time that right at the same time that it was being introduced in Tibet. And so you ended up with two distinct Vajrayana Buddhist egregores and currents, one Japanese and one Tibetan, one that kind of puts Kukai as the central figure, as the founder, and then one that puts Padmasambhava as the founder. They don't talk as much about Vimalamitra, who went into China and established Chinese Vajrayana, which used to be a thing, but like the Mughals, the communists pulled a Mughal. The Maos pulled a Mughal on that one and erased a lot of that culture. But you can probably still find it in Taiwan. I want to go check that out. I've been talking for a really long time. I'm so sorry. Oh God, they called this an interview, and then the podcaster just.
No, I'm very glad that you did. I knew that. So I mean, there's been a how do I put it? A nation's calling to Buddhism for me. Well, everyone who for my house and I should say.
But to wrap up,
I needed.
Go ahead. Oh, so after everything that I said, then another 400 years went by, and then Dogen came to China and got the whole picture. And so what I started with this, and then from this, all these other books are books Dogen recommended, actually. So that's in that sense, it is a really good place to start. He happens to be Zen Buddhist. So when he talks about Vajrayana Buddhism, he calls it a disgrace, and he calls it not Buddhism. He calls it non-Buddhism. He calls them useless bags of skin shouting from a mountaintop, holding a staff and calling it Buddhism. And it's like, that's fair, Dogen. It's fair. It's like the people who say that Christmas trees aren't Christian. You're right. It's pagan. I'm not as upset about it as the Jehovah's Witnesses are. But so, my dad was the one with the staff shouting on the mountain. So Dogen and he probably wouldn't have gotten along back in medieval Japan. Well, Dogen is a good place to start. Yeah.
Your dad said something to you that you said to me that, again, it was one of those things that just sort of sticks with you. It was that human beings are flesh tubes.
He does use the term flesh tube. Yeah. Flesh place fear junkie was the term he used a lot. But he
flesh-based fear junkie.
Flesh place. So he called the earth the flesh place. So not because the physical universe, I kind of get. He didn't tell me why, but I kind of get why, because physical universe means atoms and stuff. But the flesh place is the sensory experience of being flesh, of being an animal in the physical universe. So it's kind of a specific subset. It's a very thin slice of the physical universe, actually. When you look at the whole cosmos, like what is the experience of eyeballs looking out at the cosmos? Oh, it's over there on that little speck of dust in the corner, as Carl Sagan. But I forget it happened again. What were we talking about?
We were talking about flesh tubes.
Flesh tubes. So the flesh place, and then fear junkie. So he talked about the people who compulsively reincarnate and have a shitty time and then complain and then die and get born again. And then, like the baby in that meme, it's like, like 9 months later, I'm never going to be human again. 9 months later, there's the baby. So he calls those flesh place fear junkies, that they're people who are addicted to the fear that comes with being in a body. And then the other category he has is journeyers. So there's his polarity. So the journeyers are the souls that are like, yeah, I like being human. I'm going to do that again, you know. And then they come down here and they go, all right, what am I going to do now that I'm here? You know, as opposed to like, oh God, the end of the world. Oh God, are you going to die? You know, like some people are born in shitty situations. So there's kind of an inherent, you know, I mean, especially looking at the caste system in ancient Hinduism, it is fair to criticize, I think, that the ideas of karma and reincarnation do kind of have a little bit of a classist, you know, like, oh, well, they're rich because of the good karma in their past life, and you're poor because you must have done some shitty things in your past life. It's kind of really, you know, like, really? Who told you that? Oh, the rich guys with the pale skin from the north. And it's like, wait, what? Yeah, they came down and told us our class is down here and theirs is up here, and you know, that's what happened. So there it
They
is.
used a weird word, supremacy. We don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah, they really inspired a young man named with a mustache, you know, back in the, anyway. indirectly, yeah. I forgot the name of the guy that it was like one guy that wrote one book that was like, you know, wouldn't it be weird if the Aryans were actually us? And then like a few people, because they were from Iran, they came from Iran, they brought the Vedas and they established the caste system, and so then someone was like, you know, I think that they might have been blonde. No, no, they weren't. They weren't. Oh.
And yet
there are no polar bears in Iran either, for the same reason.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I feel like I would be remiss. So I'm thinking about polarization, and I'm thinking about the sorts of projects that I'm working on, and you know, I think like for the last few years I've been like, I've been in a very common polarized landscape for occultists, right? Where like you have your day job and then you have occultism, right? And occultism is it's usually a beloved hobby where you where you do things for like you'll do things for like an hour a day, or for like an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening or something.
Right.
And that's sort of what your practice is, right? And but the day job has to be the day job, because the day job is how you get money and how you get food and how you get everything,
candles
that you need,
and everything else. Yeah.
Right. For all the
fun stuff.
For all the fun stuff. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, but I think recently I've just sort of decided to try to integrate those two together.
Yeah.
Where like, where the occultism is the job and the job is the occultism, and everything sort of blends together. And it makes me wonder, like, is that because when I think about like Zen, and when I think about Zen and when I think about other forms of Buddhism, like there's it almost feels like sometimes, I'm sure that most Buddhists would hate that I'm saying this in the first place, but they're like almost like professional Buddhists, right?
That's what a monk is, or
like,
a priest. A priest is a professional Catholic. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Right. You have like professional religious, right? And I suppose you also have, well, you have professional occultists everywhere, right?
Yeah, it's just not as popular. Yeah. So
right.
Yeah, but you have people. So the love factor, when it's such a beloved hobby that people choose to do it, even though they're eating ramen, out of the package and stuff like that. Like, so you end up with some real dedicated hardcore people, and even homeless, people who put so much energy into the occult that they crash in a friend's basement on a friend's couch, or my old friend Gordon, he had an espresso bar. He had a coffee house back in Pasadena. He was in the Golden Dawn, and there was a Thalamite couple living in the basement. They were just living there, like there were these interesting tunnels that connected all the businesses next to him, but nobody went down there, and so there was just all these extra rooms. And so he was showing me around down there, and then I looked in, and there was like a couple laying in bed looking back at me. I'm like, hi. And he's like, Gordon's like, oh yeah, I told them they could crash here for a night, and they never left.
I remember that was sort of at one time that was sort of a badge of commitment, almost.
Yeah.
Right. Like I remember people that would they would sleep in whatever temple space they had.
Yeah. There were people crashing up in Canada. Some that have been on the podcast in the past few episodes. Well, one, Elwin. I shall bleep out his name. I don't know if that's public. I think he keeps it separate.
But there's this. It's interesting. There's almost like I remember that there was this sense of. I remember there being like this sense of great sacrifice, right? That this person was putting so much energy into whatever space they were building, that they they didn't have a home anymore, and that this, but also that there was this equation of holiness with poverty, right? Like I'm willing to give up all this stuff.
Yeah, I've noticed in Christianity and Buddhism both, because their founders were beggars, they were wandering beggars in both cases, Buddha and Jesus. I mean, he had a career before that, but later on, quit the material and seek the spiritual in our Theoricus initiation, and the eye of the camel, the needle with the eye of the camel. I think to such a degree that there's been a backlash against it, and in the form of prosperity gospels, and sure. And the New Age version of the Think and Grow Rich, kind of law of attraction focused toward materialism, like that kind of thing. And then there's there's polarization there. Then there's the people who hate the fact that the spiritual people that missed the point, and then there's the people that hate the fact that people think you have to be poor to be spiritual, and another thing to transcend.
Another surface to surf upon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a thing, I mean, looking at my own life and my own past, being right, or telling someone they're right, is such a good feeling, to be right with someone, to be right together, and to talk about those wrong people. It's just such a nice flow. It's such a good feeling, and so it makes sense, and it also makes sense looking at the survival. Of course, the tribe, the village has to stick together against that other village, and if who are you going to choose, that village or this village, well, this one, of course, and then within the family, who are you going to choose, your brother or your cousin? Oh, well, my brother, of course. And so it's, I don't know. I have no answers. I just, I don't know.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, I try to reconcile as much as I can, both in my spiritual practice and then in everything else, and then especially one thing. I feel like most of my original ideas about spirituality are usually they're usually so uncomfortable that nobody else even wants to hear about them.
I'd like to hear about them.
Okay, so I knew you would. I said that.
Uncomfortable is good, yeah. Because they always say be suspicious of something that sounds good or sounds comfortable or sounds desirable. But if it sounds uncomfortable, then maybe it has more likely that it's true. Unless God is an all-loving, sense in the sense of spoiling his child and putting him in velvet sheets.
Except for BT, he'll get this.
Yeah.
And my uncomfortable idea is when you're around someone who's opinionated, have less opinions. So like if you're around like when you're around someone who believes that they're right, right? Who believes, okay, I've already gone on my hero's journey and I've already discovered the truth. And here's what the truth is, right? Listen to the truth. Listen to what they have to say, right? And keep in mind that that person knows the truth and is just as much in ignorance as you are, right? Like they have the same wiring, they have the same nerves, what they have discovered, whether you like it or not, is just as valid as what you have discovered, right? And so listen to what they have to say. And here's the uncomfortable part. Do not have a rebuttal. Just let them say what they have to say and thank them for their opinion.
Yeah. Sometimes they're looking for cues of agreement and they get frustrated when you don't give them, but that's a specific case.
It's true. They get endlessly frustrated at that because you're like water at that point.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, okay, well, thanks. Okay.
And
you're not being sarcastic. You're just being.
Yeah. If they're hiding something, they think you can see it, even if they don't know what it is.
Right. Because usually that they know that the truth that they have discovered has flaws.
Yeah.
And
the last time they told someone the truth they discovered, they heard about all the flaws in their rebuttal.
Right.
Yeah. They've heard the rebuttal. And so
when you don't give them a rebuttal,
yeah,
then first off, they sort of have nothing to build on.
Yeah.
And so like, but I'm not really saying this as like a technique of intellectual warfare. only really like a technique of intellectual warfare on the self, right? Because now you're forcing your own truth, you're forcing your own opinions to be molded by the people around you.
Yeah.
Right. And your own opinions, like there's nothing, this is like, I don't know what to call it, but there, I guess like a guiding principle for me is there is nothing sacrosanct about your opinions. Like just because you've built them, just because you're on this hero's journey that's made this core of beautiful shining truth, right? Everybody else has the same thing too. There's billions and billions of these shining cores, right?
Yeah.
And if you really trust the divine, if you really trust God, then the divine has put these other forms of truth around you for a reason, right? It's so that this divine core within you can be molded, you can learn things, right? This is putting humility in action, right? Where you're not allowing your own opinions to mar whatever it is that other people are trying to say. And it's when you actually do it, it's tremendously uncomfortable because it's like, I'm surrendering something that was so important to me, my truth.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's a difference between what you're describing and agreeing with the opinions of the people around you.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes,
right.
there is.
Yeah. Being a yes man or, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's different.
It's different because now you're not agreeing with either one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the really uncomfortable part, is that you're saying that your own truth isn't necessarily something that you agree with. And their truth isn't necessarily something that you agree with. So now you're on this like weird middle ground, and it's super uncomfortable.
There's an old story about a rabbi talking to a couple that's getting divorced, and the husband tells him his side of the story and why it was all her fault, And the rabbi says, "You're right." And then the woman, the wife, comes and says, you know, her side of the story and why it's all his fault. And he's like, "You're right." And then the ex-husband and ex-wife go talk amongst themselves, and then they realize that he said that to both of them, and they get upset and they want to know what the deal is. So they both come in together and say, "You said that he was right. You said that I was right. We can't both be right." And he says, "You're right." It's kind of fun. But what you're describing reminds me a little more of the Tao Te Ching. I have a tiny one over there, but I'm not going to get up and get it. It's yeah, it's much more like you know, the getting everything done by doing nothing kind of thing. And the way that Gordon, my old teacher, used to describe it is because at that time I was in my early 20s, and people in their early 20s, they want to try to grab life like it's a steering wheel or a joystick and make it go that way and that way. And he was trying to teach me to sit and watch. And when you observe the whole thing, then you know exactly what word delivered in just the right way at the right time can steer the whole thing in a different direction. But if you're in there like doing this, you know, trying to like micromanage every little thing, you're not going to comprehend what's going on. If you do indeed make a difference, you won't even be able to see what the difference is, because you're so focused on your own sort of conscious ego interaction with whatever's in front of you. And I think I'm putting some words in his mouth. I'm elaborating on what he was saying, but I remember, yeah, he had good advice like that. Like when something, you know, triggers you, that you know, this is like Stephen Covey and stuff. Like someone does something, someone makes a face at you, someone shouts at you, whatever it is, and you feel that anger, that the beginning of it, before you actually get angry, you know that the anger is coming. It's like a seed that hasn't entered into this world yet, but you know it's there, and you just pinch it out before it comes in. And that's like such a nice, he had some good teachings like that sort of remind me of, but they can be weapons though. Like all of these things can be for healing or for harming, like every square of the vault, you know, you can use Empress or the Tower or the Fool to do great good or to really mess someone up. I remember I threw the moon card at my old teacher in a dream once, and then his daughter's little toy started like making noise. And then he woke up in a cold sweat, and his toy was making this weird music, but the battery was dying. So it was like this weird carnival music while he's making himself a sandwich. I was like, "I'm sorry, I was really pissed at you. I threw a moon card at you in a dream last night." He's like, "That was you." He's an Episcopal priest now, but anyway.
Oh, nice! Wow. Yeah. I'm a recent fan of Episcopalianism.
Oh yeah, they're the good ones. You know, like whenever anybody complains about Abrahamic religion, I can always quote an Episcopal rector at them, you know, and you don't know what to say. They usually just don't reply. My buddy Robbie took me to the Episcopal Church in Pasadena. There was a famous guy, Ed Bacon, that he's sort of well known in Catholic and, you know, all the local circles around there. And but then there was another guy. I think I might have seen the last time Ed Bacon was up there, or maybe it was a different guy. But it was just so impressive. Like it struck me like everybody there were like King Arthur and you know, Renaissance fair geeks. Like everybody there could probably quote Holy Grail, you know, like you know what I mean? Like I just got that vibe. It was like they were literary buffs who were generally left-leaning. There was my friend's wife was breastfeeding in the church during the service, and nobody did anything but, you know, like just not approving. It's none of my business, but it's good that you're doing that in church, you know, like it's because it's holy and natural, and Mother Mary did that, you know, so by all means do it in church. Try that in a conservative Catholic church, and have a very different response. Very different response. So yeah, I mean, I like the liturgical, I like the you know, all that stuff. But as far as people, I mean, I don't want to talk crap about people as a group, but but generally speaking, I would probably make more friends among Episcopalians, you know.
Sure.
I'd be able to be myself more. I wouldn't have to like hide things. I could even tell them, you know, like they even love Alan Watts. You bring up Alan Watts to an Episcopal rector, and they say, "Oh yeah, Alan Watts, love Alan Watts." What were you saying?
Well, this conversation brought up something that I wanted to bring up here, and I kind of wanted your opinion on this one.
Yeah.
So over 2020, over the American pandemic, I call it the American pandemic because there's still other places in the world that are going through a pandemic now, or they haven't, and they may never.
We're getting our third wave now here in India.
Oh, okay, yeah. But during that time, that was a time of solitude for my wife and I that we didn't even know that we needed, you know. But it brought us great clarity of purpose. It brought us great clarity of what we wanted to do with ourselves. But it also, I remember it would also bring these bouts of like just it's hard to describe. It was crankiness on a whole other level. Like we, you know, like I would
like
become like cranky. Sort of, yeah. Like you would become cranky, but also like very, very narrow focus. And like sort of you have this predisposition to rage like all the time, right? And mostly it was because there were medical causes for this, right? Like, well, first off, the solitude, right? Like extreme solitude for extended periods.
Yeah.
And then also a lack of sleep. Like I had a lot of insomnia when I over 20. That's a recurring issue with me. How do you, when you're in this sort of like quasi medically induced state, right, where this quasi medically induced unenlightened state, and you know that you're in this, you're like, I'm having problems, you know, like where, you know, you're like, I'm not in a good place mentally. How do you apply enlightened thought in an unenlightened state?
You know, that's a good question. I'm thinking of examples from my own life and times that I've been in horrible states. And I think that there's a double think in the Orwellian sense, not in the Orwellian sense, not exactly in the Orwellian sense. What I mean is when I'm thinking, I don't even care if I die today, you know, I'm thinking that in the middle of a fight or something, or like, you know, that kind of thing. But I know I don't mean it, you know, like I know that this is temporary. I've been through this so many times. I know you come out the other side, and what seems like the end of the world isn't. And so there's kind of like, I give myself space to go through what I'm going through, but so yeah, I guess it's a little bit like what you were describing. There's the part of me that's saying my opinions, and then there's the other part of me that's letting myself say my opinions rather than retorting, like you know, well, no, ultimately everything's going to be fine. Like, no, I just sort of sit back and let myself say everything's shit. And you know, it passes, because it's like, I mean, I suppose there's ways to get from one place to another. And I you know, deep breathing and writing, journaling, getting the words out from here onto the page so you can see how ridiculous they are. You know what I mean? When you're in that state, that helps, I think. You know, like even however immature and irrational and unenlightened the thoughts are, just write them down as they are, and then look at them and go, all right, yeah, okay, I can let go of this, like, but sometimes when they're just repeating and bouncing around like a pinball, then it can escalate. Actually, you get more and more enraged about this thing that is actually stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
I like that idea that you said of allowing those opinions to flow without a retort.
Hmm.
Right, because it's another application of that technique of not arguing.
Yeah.
And really that you're bringing out like what's actually happening there, right? Because when you're feeling unenlightened, right, there's only friction there because you feel that you should be acting a different way. And that idea in itself is a resistance, right? And because we're as if you're a seeker, if you're a if you're a journeyer of the soul, you are perhaps looking to better yourself, right? But when you're seeking to better yourself, all that you're putting energy into that, right? A lot of it. And when you're in and you are doing that partially because you have valued being enlightened more than being unenlightened, right? And you just are not going to be like that all the time. And in an unenlightened state, you're afraid. Like I'm speaking for myself. I should be speaking for myself.
Yeah, it's okay.
When I'm in an unenlightened state, I'm afraid that I'm not enlightened at that time. I'm afraid of not being enlightened.
Right.
Put it that way.
Yeah.
And by allowing, just being aware and allowing those opinions to just flow through you, and just being more aware of who you are and what you are, you can start to let go of that fear. It's an interesting thing because it's like if you don't have any motivation to become enlightened in the first place, well, you're probably not going to do anything. But at the same time, that the motivation itself can cause, or the context in which the motivation occurs has problems. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking too many things. One, there's two basic, again, with my old teacher, Gordon. He was my student in Golden Dawn, but he's much older than me and wiser. So he's my teacher in reality, but my student in Golden Dawn, but he once said, that the Buddha didn't say this, but Gordon said that the Buddha said that if you want to get rid of suffering, then you have to get rid of desire. But if you want to keep the desire, you have to embrace the suffering. I told him that later. I said, you said the Buddha said that. And he's like, what? I said that? I like it, but I don't remember saying it. But it's a good one.
What's really cool is like when I think about like past conversations that we've had, like there have been things that we've said together that I have that have like become part of like my embedded worldview, right?
Internal.
And I'm willing to bet that if we revisited some of that stuff, like either you would have no recollection of it, or you'd be like, no, I remember that conversation, but I said the opposite. I didn't say that.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Or if something was misunderstood, like if we were whispering when something was going on,
right?
We were supposed to be talking, or
yeah.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, so in that sense, enlightenment. And I was talking recently on the last episode about surrendering to a higher power in the context of Alcoholics Anonymous or you know, similar things. And but then I mentioned that I had a schizophrenic student, you know, a student who had some form of schizophrenia, and when he started evoking angels, the angels appeared and told him he must sacrifice his son to prove his loyalty to God. So what is the higher power that you're surrendering to? Is it the guy in those particular chapters of the Old Testament that you're really on the working with that guy, you know, the one they call the demiurge in some circles? Or, and I should mention, when people get, because there's a little bit of an anti-Semitic edge when people start talking about the demiurge. And I always point out that the God in Leviticus seems to be a little different than the God in Songs of Solomon, you know, like, and those are both Old Testament. So it's not so simple as Old Testament God and New Testament God. And there was El and Yahweh and so on. Anyway, okay, I lost track. Damn it. What was I talking about? Should I go through and edit these out or just leave them in and let people be frustrated? No, it's part of the flow. It's part of the flow, because they probably got derailed when I got derailed. I got derailed. I don't know what I was talking about.
I feel like you, like with you and I, like flow is an important component.
Oh yeah, I remember. So
you remembered. Okay.
When one person says God, they might be thinking of, you know, just maybe like a little bit they learned in nursery school or in Sunday school when they were young. They learned that Jesus is God and God is love, and there's a dove involved. God. And then there's people that are just really, really focused on those damn Edomites and Canaanites and the metaphors, and that the homosexuals are the Edomites and the lesbians are the you know, I'm not saying this. Yeah. I'm quoting hypothetical.
No.
They're both Christian. They're both talking about God. They're both talking about surrendering to God and doing God's will. How are they so damn different? And then I think the same can apply to the word like enlightenment. If you move from one person to the next in a yoga class or in a Golden Dawn temple even, there might be a little bit more, you know, if you have a good solid groupthink going on in a particular temple, they might all have the same answer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a universal answer or that it's a good or useful answer. Like, you know, so is enlightenment being able to embrace porcupines and say, ouch, I love it, you know, like sort of a sadomasochistic approach toward just running in, you know, like fools rush in where angels fear to tread into life, and just like or is enlightenment staying in the room with the rice and the bowl and gazing at the wall until you attain oneness? I don't know. Have I thrown the whole thing? Oh shit! I just knocked down all of religion and esotericism like pinballs. No. There's nowhere left to go. I've deconstructed. I'm a chaos magician. I just have to admit it. I'm a fucking Thelemite, aren't I? Oh Jesus! I'm gonna take this thing off. No.
You're a man of mystery, talking of a mystery.
Yeah. I'm not trying to sell anything. That's the thing. Just sort of analyzing and looking at. We like, by the way, just so people know, we started talking the other day, and we realized that it had been 16 years or some long time since we'd had an kind of in-depth conversation. And so we decided to do this, but we had no idea for a topic. And we didn't even talk about whether to have a topic or not. So I just thought,
we didn't.
I'll just go through and write down what did we talk about and make that the description of what we talked about.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
I do that often.
So talking about your the question of what God you're actually speaking with.
Yeah, what is or enlightenment, that what do we mean, you know, like I'm not enlightened today. Maybe enlightenment is realizing that there is no dichotomy between a not enlightened day and an enlightened day. That reminds me of a Padmasambhava quote, supposedly memorized by Yeshe Tsogyal, and then written down 50 years ago by some white new ager that was channeling her, very reliable stuff. That was basically that when you realize something of that nirvana and samsara are of the same nature, and they're both temporal. And so it's like, what are we shooting for? If the goal isn't nirvana, then what is? And then, but there's like a transcendence even beyond the attainment of transcendence or the attainment of nirvana, because you transcend, but then you fall back down, and then you have a fight with your loved one, and then you make up, and then you meditate, and then you go back up again. But this, like, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm winning, I'm losing, I'm failing, I'm succeeding. I'm on the path, I fell off the path, or I strayed from the path. That is the path. It's just that's what the path looks like. Sometimes you're angry, and sometimes you're at peace, and sometimes you're asleep, and sometimes you're hungry, and maybe.
This totally reminds me of I think that you and I were doing a working together. This was a long time ago, and it was in California. And no, it wasn't one work, it was many workings. As you probably remember, we used to have these events where many people would arrive, and
Power Week.
Power
Week. Yeah,
right, Power Week, or I think it was during a Power Week. Anyway, it was close to the end of the Power Week, and I don't know if you remember this, but there was this whole meta thing going on with Power Week, where as each day went by, you're getting more and more tired, right? Because you're doing so much on every day. And I remember it was close to the end, and and by the way, like the deeper into this school of metaphysics that you get, the more stuff there is to do. So this was like you and I both were like, we were full on, we were deep in it at this point.
Yeah.
And it was close to the end of the week, totally exhausted. We've done stuff all day, right? And then there's more stuff to do. There's more stuff to do at night. There's more teaching that we both need to do at night, right? And we just pressed on. We just kept going. We were in our early 20s. We were unstoppable.
Oh yeah.
But I remember, like, at some point, like we did a bunch of work. And I was just exhausted. But that exhaustion was a gift in a way, because I was so tired. I'm pretty sure I was with you, and I don't think I said anything at the time, but we went outside, right? Like after the whole day. So we started at like 7 a.m. It's like 11 o'clock at night. We've been basically praying all day long, right? And we've come to the end. We're just going to go home and go to sleep because we're so tired. But I remember going outside, and the place where we were was right near a truck stop.
Yeah.
And this truck stop had these trucks that were tremendously loud, right? If they like use their Jake brakes or whatever. We go outside, truck goes by, Jake brakes are hit. It's this huge sound. Right?
Yeah.
And I swear to you, if I have not heard holier thunder in my life, I would be surprised.
Oh yeah, that's true. That did kind of happen, where there would be well-timed, like sometimes that would actually happen with thunder. Very rarely, because Southern California gets like one storm every 2 years or something like that. But yeah, there would be a lot of noises coming from outside sometimes at just the right moment that kind of like, whoa, that was interesting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that I think that moment was very important for me, because it showed me that the holiness or baseness of everyday moments is not based on what's happening around you. It's based on what's happening within you, and that the perspective that you bring to these moments is the crucial part.
That reminds me of something that I like to tell. When I was young, my dad would meditate, and he was doing Vajrayana, so that involved a lot of chanting. And so usually Om, Om was kind of the main thing that it centered around. Om. And then if the neighbors were making noise, a weed whacker, someone, a gardener, a leaf blower, that kind of thing, he'd get so mad, that it was not perfectly quiet for his meditation. So in my 4-year-old mind, I observed this, and I decided that I had the solution. And so when the neighbor's lawnmower would start going, or when there was some loud noise or any like big motor, big, that type of thing, then I would sit down and say, Kong. So my word wasn't about silence. It had to have to be the only word in a void. My word was just going right along, celebrating all the noise. Of course, when you're 4, it's kind of like you have a different attitude. But I come back to that. Like if I'm thinking, meditating, and there's some noise outside that I remember, I just sort of smile and go, "This is part of it." Because you hear some birds tweeting. Yeah, this is part of the natural meditative experience. And you hear a dog barking, say, okay, well, it's a little annoying, but it's still nature. And then someone puts on the radio, and then someone using a leaf blower. I can't deal with all of this non-nature, anti-God stuff in my sphere of sensation. Why? Well, who drew that line? Was it the Romantics? Like, are you stuck in the 1700s or what? Or was that 1800s? Anyway.
Yeah. That's a great. That's exactly the question. Why, like, why can't you handle reality if you're enlightened? Like what? I mean,
is enlightenment such a fragile, sensitive thing that it can't handle a car honking?
Right, and like, yeah, exactly. And does that really help you? Like if you're trying to build this bubble and you're just trying to make it thicker and thicker, you still haven't addressed like the core things, which is that, and the core things are that you're impatient. The core things are that when you hear loud noises, you become angry and afraid. The core things that make your existence so difficult, they're not solved by walking away from existence. They're solved by embracing existence.
Going into it and sorting it and not resisting it. And I guess it depends on what we're talking about here. I'm being pretty abstract, but like finding, like in one thing, my parents were trained in Earhart seminars training, and Earhart was ripping off L. Ron Hubbard, and there was some lawsuits about it and stuff. So they used the tone scale, the emotional tone scale that is familiar to Scientologists. So I grew up with that, even though I didn't have much there was no Scientology going on in my house, but there was some secondhand Scientology going on. So then Gordon was an ex-Scientologist, and his thing was he loved William Burroughs, and William Burroughs was an ex-Scientologist. So Gordon became a Scientologist so he could become an ex-Scientologist. Making it brief.
And understand William Burroughs better?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. So I started a Facebook group called the William Burroughs School of Ex-Scientology. And it's there's some nice quotes, and a bunch of people have joined. Like people like it. I think he wrote a book called Ex-Scientology, actually. But anyway, enough about that. What was my point? Oh God, did I lose it again? What were we talking about before? I was going to relate it to something. Oh yeah, the earlier similar. So when something makes you mad, then you go to your auditor, and the auditor says, "So what happened today?" "Oh, something made me mad," or whatever. And you say, "Okay, what did it remind you of?" "Well, it reminded me of when my sister used to hold my head under the water." "Oh, well, what did that remind you of?" "Oh, it reminded me of when I was being ignored when I was in the crib when I was a baby." And then poof, it's gone. Now you're not angry anymore when that comes up or when that button gets stimulated, because it's been brought from the unconscious into the conscious, from the darkness into the light. And it's sort of like there's no need to give a retort when the answer is already obvious. The silence speaks the retort. The silence is enough. Someone says something ridiculous, let the crickets retort. The crickets are the best response. Because and then one other thing, I'm sorry, I'm on a going like this.
It's okay.
We were talking about the brain and the unconscious. One thing, when I did dimethyltryptamine, I've done a few psychedelics, but one in particular, I had this sort of like, you know, in the Divine Pymander, the second book, there's the Pomander and Hermes, and it's like a conversation between the magician and God, basically. And so I was having that kind of experience where I was watching the leaves of the palm trees and the sky and of all of its interesting colors, and it was like I was expressing something and it was responding, and then I was expressing and it was responding, and then I realized that the entire cosmos, as far as I know it, is in here. Like literally, I mean, you can intellectually realize that, but like I have never had an experience of anything that wasn't in here, and not even any thought, no movie, no book, no looking at the starry night sky, no, I mean, if you're talking about astral projection, people will get hung up on, oh no, so you don't believe the astral body leaves the body. You know, that's not what I'm talking about. Like you know, just speaking from this point of view, you know, I like my grandpa. My one grandpa was a scientist, and my other, you know, my dad, different sides, and so I've got the very, very atheistic scientific approach there too, which is very contradictory with what I got from my dad, which is like, I get the sense that in a former life he was, you know, that kind of thing. I did it again. I was so good in the interview with Kess. I had so many coherent thoughts, and I didn't derail. I've derailed 27 times in this conversation.
It's okay.
Gotta rewind.
Do you think when we derail, we should just not worry about it?
Yeah,
like,
I'm not going to worry about it, because it's a beautiful type of conversation, actually, to you just, you know, like when it trails off to where there's nothing left to be said, where it's just sort of, yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
people can just watch us. That'd be like some kind of abstract modern, you know, modernist type, modern art kind of podcast where we just sit and stare at each other for, like, someone's probably already done that, I think. You know?
Oh yeah. It's very easy.
Yeah.
Or very
deep.
hard.
Yeah.
Depending on who you are.
Faux deep.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Cheap deep.
Oh.
What else should we talk about?
Do you want to talk about
what have we talked about? We talked about polarization in magic and politics in the vault, the floor of the vault. We talked a little bit about alchemy and God, I don't even know what we talked about.
We went on a long tear about the history of Buddhism.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I did that.
Yep. We went on. We hinted at. We sort of hinted at ways to reconcile that polarization.
Yeah. Hey, can I do something very selfish?
Yeah.
I published my first book recently, Thomas and the Wolf, and I've been very careful not to put any spoilers out there, but I'm going to give a couple of spoilers right now that I get for that if people haven't read the book, and if they're just like, why would I want to read a book about that? Because the description is one of them. One character, Thomas, he's a left tuber. In other words, he's a guy on YouTube that's left politically, and he likes to promote the left and talk about how the right, you know, is wrong. And then the wolf is, in this universe, he's the QAnon shaman. So in he doesn't wear a buffalo headdress, he wears a wolf headdress, but it's the same guy. He has the same role in our collective conscious, but he has a different personality. He's actually a different guy. So these are the two main characters, and I have them meet. And, you know, so people are like, okay, so what? You're going to solve all the political issues? It goes a little deeper, and there's an unexpected twist. I don't know if I should say what it is, but it involves a Sigillium de Amet. It involves a tent, a temple that's a tent made of Persian rugs. and it involves real magic. I mean, it involves magic. And I almost want to say it, but I don't want to say it. But what it is, in the end, they don't agree. They don't agree, but they don't hate each other. And and they have a commonality. I also made the wolf not racist, which is kind of weird because he has a swastika tattoo from when he was in prison. So it's kind of like, what? You know, like, wait, but that was a long time ago. That was 35 years ago, and, you know, or however long ago. He's an older guy. It's also a generational tale where Thomas is 24 and the wolf is like 58 or something like that. So it's like an older Gen X and a millennial, or is that one millennial anymore? Yeah, that's still millennial, young millennial. So there's a lot. Basically what happened, and I'll just tell you, as I was watching this YouTube channel, and just for the sake of not being a creep, I'm not going to say which YouTube channel it was, but I had this very strong experience that I was looking at my dad. And I was like, this 24-year-old kid that's very articulately, you know, laying all this stuff out. He's just, his aura, his humor, his look in his eye. I was like, I think this is my dad, you know? And so part of me was thinking, wouldn't that be weird if I sent this kid Transformations, my dad's book, so that he could read the book he wrote in his former life? And so that then immediately, bing, the next thought I had after that was the entire plot of this as a way of universalizing that silly sort of moment I was having, but making the characters a little different, so it wasn't me and my dad, but making me into the QAnon shaman and my dad into the young millennial left tuber. And then the question became, well, before that, right, mixed up into that question was, do I have anything worth imparting to the young, you know, like atheistic, you know, the humanistic generation, you know, we in the 90s, we saw the craft, you know what I mean? We were into magic before the craft, you know, like it was a different mindset. Like, I don't know exactly why. Maybe we could analyze psychologically why that generation got into magic so much. But then now this generation, they have a solidarity in their atheistic human leftism, you know, the ones that are in that camp. And so and then if they looked at me wearing my cultural appropriation, you know, stuff with my pseudo spiritual British colonialism, you know, symbol and all my things that from the land that I raped, you know, I mean, there's this sort of extremist leftist kind of point of view where everything is seen through the eyes of, oh, you have white skin, therefore everything you do reminds me of colonialism and slavery, you know, and it's like, right. You and know, the cotton that, you know, it's like, okay, yeah, you know, your cell phone, yeah, I know, you know, it's like, come on, man, you know, but yeah, so is there anything worth saying? If I could meet my dad, if he was one of these 24-year-olds that I imagine would just judge the heck out of me, is there anything, if he wanted to hear one thing, what could I say? And so I decided to say it in the form of the QAnon shaman talking to this poor kid who's, you know, like had to go across the world. And so I guess the reason I'm saying all this is there's more going on in this thing than what's written on the description. And so I'm taking the opportunity. This is like paid promotion, what they do on the news when they're, let's spend the next 15 minutes talking about Dove soap, you know, for no reason whatsoever. Thank you, Dove soap. You know, like that. Except I'm putting it in my own pocket. You know,
hey, congratulations on your completed project. I mean,
thank you very much. Yeah.
They're you know, projects are a little bit like babies. You know, you have to you gestate them. You do many things to get them to grow and to come into the world. Yeah. And then writing especially is it's a special project. It's a very special sort of thing because in ways that you don't necessarily even want, it will outlive you.
That's true. Yeah.
So sometimes, and it's like, sometimes I look at the dictionary that I published in the same way, where it's like, it's just a beautiful, I'm very happy with its presentation, and I'm very happy with the way that it turned out. And the other thing is, when I read it now, I'm in the middle of book number 2, which is the translation of a grimoire. And in some ways it's very far from the dictionary that I worked on all those years ago. But that dictionary, it lives on. It has like its own life now, and I can only hope, when I speak to people about it, to still be educated fully on its contents.
Yeah, if they make reference to something that you don't quite remember.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Actually, in preparation for this call, I was looking through it again. Because I mean, the whole thing is like, it's like a barrow or a labyrinth of topics, where like you can bounce to different terms in the dictionary and it'll bring you like deeper and deeper. And usually the deepest that you go is the reference of some alchemist that the author was referring to.
Right.
And so I went in that direction, and I was like coming across like authors that I completely forgot about. Like I did not remember that those people existed. But yeah, your writing outlives you, and it crystallizes some part of you, right? It crystallizes you in a way that nothing else, that I don't think anything else really does. Yeah. Except for maybe a podcast.
I always used to say, don't talk to me about writing books. People would say, when are you going to write a book? I'd say, I have a podcast. Would you ask a person why he doesn't have a horse in the day and age when everybody has a car? I was like, I finally wrote a book. Actually, it was touching a nerve, because I wanted to be a writer ever since I was a little kid. And then you probably saw the post on Facebook. And, so yeah, it's like, it's a long time coming. I've written a lot of stuff and just posted it on Facebook, but that doesn't really count. I mean, but I also published, I don't know if you saw my dad's book, Transformations, my dad's book he wrote in 1976. Yes. Yeah. So they're both on Amazon, just for everybody else. Yep. If you search for Reib, R-E-I-B, that's my name. It's also my dad's name. You'll get both of our books, because it's not a common name. But if you search for Edward Reib, you'll get Thomas and the Wolf. You can search for Thomas and the Wolf, scroll past Thomas Wolf's books, and then you'll see Thomas and the Wolf. And then if you search for Transformations, scroll past the ones with the fancy pictures and find the one that just looks like a blank piece of paper that says Transformations, 1976. Bam, that's the one. And $2 on Kindle. $12 for the Thomas and the Wolf, $8 for Transformations. The reason being the paper quality and the ink quality. Okay, sorry, end of ad. That's a little random advertisement thrown in there.
Can you do an ad for the dictionary?
Yes. Ta-da! So this is Joe Zabinski's dictionary, translated. How old is the French one? This is from French, right? Or
yes, and the original edition's from 1758,
right?
If I'm remembering correctly.
So since 1758, people who speak French have been able to enjoy this dictionary, which basically, if you ever have read an alchemical document, you'll know that there's so many terms that you're like, what, what, the lizard in the bottle of the, these Latin phrases that are like, huh? And you look up the Latin phrase and it means, hot sand or hot water, and you're like, ah. And so, but if you get yourself a copy of this Mytho-Hermetic dictionary translated by Joe Zabinski, then you can study all the alchemy, and you can watch. Now, even in pop culture, if you want to watch a Netflix show, you kind of have to have one of these around so you can know what the heck the young witches are talking about as they fight the werewolves and the vampires, because all the witches speak Latin, of course, like in real life.
If you follow the threads through, and actually a friend of mine wrote a sort of introduction or prologue to the work, And he talks about in there how you can pick any particular term, and then as long as it bounces to another term, you can start to educate yourself.
Wiki surfing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you can get into it is an entrance. It is a portal into the world of 18th and 17th century alchemy.
Nice.
If you so desire.
Yeah. Now, William Wynne Westcott put together the Collectica Hermetica, and the Hermetic Arcanum is part of that, I believe. Or he called it the Hermetic Arcanum. I don't remember. But he put that together in the 90s. But it was a collection of works from earlier, right? Do you happen to know how much earlier?
For Westcott, the Collectanea Hermetica.
Yeah, the ones we studied in Philosophus.
I'm going to say, like the Ishmael.
They were early, right? Yeah. Well, there was that, but
yes.
then there was the Hermetic Arcanum, I guess, is what I'm thinking of, and Hermes Trismegistus is pretty old. There was a rumor that it was based on the Picatrix, but I don't think that's true. There's some commonality, some overlapping phrases, but there's too many differences between them.
Man, I have to remind myself of the contents of that. I'm pretty sure that it was I'm pretty sure that it was mostly 17th century stuff.
Yeah.
Now I have to go and look.
The Divine Pymander of Hermes Trismegistus. I don't know if maybe you missed that. Have you ever heard of the Source family?
Have I heard of
the Source family? They made a documentary. The Source family. There was a restaurant in Hollywood in the 1970s, and they all were vegetarian and wore white robes. And their leader was a white guy with a big beard, and he was named Yahweh. And they had names like Isis and Jinn and Ma'at, all the culties. They got up to 120 members before the leader passed away. What a brilliant idea! Can you imagine if our cult leader had passed away before he really went dark? Then we'd just be a bunch of we'd be a bunch of confused orphan, so the way it happened with the Source family, I mean, he wasn't a perfect guy, obviously. There were some people that thought he did bad things, and other people who thought, so there's people that defend him and say, yes, he was dark, but that means he was human. All humans have dark side. He did bad things. I do bad things. You do bad things. But he's the head of my cult, and then there was the people that were like, he did bad things. I'm not going to keep the name Strawberry. I'm going to go back to being Brett Johnson and pretend that period of my life never happened. And so of the 120 people that were in the cult, you end up with some people going that way and other people going that way. And of the people that went this way, that are still to this day actively a member of the cult that hasn't been around since 1975, one of them is Jin Aquarian, and he was the guitarist in the band Yahweh 13, where the cult leader would sing, oh, and they'd bang on a drum, and there'd be someone going, ding, 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 ding. It was the 70s, and so that guy, he called me up at the Screen Actors Guild, and he was like, I want to sue ISIS. I don't know how much of this I should be talking about. It was a few years ago. He's like, I need to sue ISIS Aquarian because she's putting out a documentary about my beloved cult that I disagree with, and I think that they should have a different approach, but she's using my music. I can hear myself playing guitar in this fucking documentary. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally familiar with the whole thing, and I can understand why you're upset, and I really love how he combined, Kundalini yoga with Builders of the Atom style, Paul Foster Casey and Golden Dawn magic. I mean, what a synthesis. I was always trying to breed something out of traditional Golden Dawn with Vajrayana Buddhist, Tibetan, Nyingma tradition. And so I always felt a commonality. And in fact, I had a band at my house when and I thought I was the first person to think, hey, let's do Eastern and Western and have a band, and we'll all, take acid and all this stuff. And he was like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm the secretary at Screen Actors Guild who answered the phone, just now. And he's like, and Isis Aquarian? I'm like, actually, she's on her way here right now. I'm meeting with her in half an hour. And he's like, what? And so it's like, yeah, she's coming over to meet me because I run the LA Sanctuary of the Golden Dawn and Zarathustra Aquarian. He's like, Zarathustra Aquarian? I'm like, yeah. And so I told him, you guys are lucky. And he said, why? And I said, when you're in a 120-year-old cult, you end up with names that are like, your name is Latin for he who gazeth upon the lamp that sits upon the mantle of the Lord, you know, but you guys have cool names like Isis and Jinn and, you know, and so he said, would you like me to give you a name in the Aquarian family, in the source family? And I said,
oh, no way.
I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah.
And so he got off the phone and he wrote me about a half an hour later and said, congratulations, you are Pymander Aquarian.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, now I have to find that guy. There's this part of me. It only comes out every once in a while, but there's this part of me that would like to like just sort of go full tilt, like just find as many strange cults as you can. And just like join all of them and just like sort of like see what happens, because it would be a fun adventure.
Yeah. Here's what we can do. You become my part-time co-host for Esoterinerd. It's not a paying job, it's volunteer. But then we can seek out every weirdo, the UFO folks,
oh man,
you know, and then and Robbie occasionally we will interview people that he's connected to in California. So I don't know, I'm just putting it out there. Like we could maybe keep, you know, put invites out, or, you know, I mean, because the thing is, like, at what point, because there's a lot of people these days in the New Age world and spiritual world who really want to harp on these anti-vax issues, and, you know, and kind of the stuff that is sort of poison in the collective conscious, you know, in the web. And I don't want my channel to be another means by which, you know, information that is destructive to people,
sure.
You know, get through. So I mean, but at the same time, maybe I should lighten up and just like you said, like what's his name, Art Bell, you know, like he doesn't put up any resistance. He's like, wow, that's really interesting. Oh, we'll talk to you next week, you know, like, but you know that he must be thinking this guy's full of shit. Well, sometimes, I mean, you know, like Art Bell,
but there's something to be said for contemporary anthropology. For
looking at the weird stuff
just
going
listening
on
to
now.
people and yeah, exactly, like listening to people and letting people express the folklore of modern times in the language that they want to express it in. You know. I mean, I think that first off, it would be a lot of fun, because we would, you know, because we'd be seeing so many things that you never get to see in the world. And we would have the opportunity to collect so many different opinions and so many different experiences, you know. And we probably learn a lot too. So yeah, I mean, like, I think it would be fun. I think it would be interesting. I can already think of like I just off the top of my head, I could think of like 3 or 4 people that like really need to be interviewed. You know, like people that, like, you know, they have something valuable to say. They may not even, sometimes they don't even like realize that they have something valuable to say. But I think like yeah, there's definitely something to be said for. There's something to be said for bringing more opinions in, bringing in more people, you know, and exposing more people to like I said before, to like a contemporary folklore. You know, I mean, I call it that because this so this goes back to it. This is another saint story. I had a saint come to visit me in a dream, and we had this long conversation, and he's like, he was a really interesting guy. The relevance to this topic is, he pointed out to me that, so I asked him about I asked him about the Gospels, which is like sort of like this like kind of like obvious thing you should probably ask a saint, like if you're talking to a saint, right? If you want to learn something, because you have a version of the same literature that they do.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can
so
say
you're
in
going
the
to be able to
Gospel
learn
of Judas,
things.
why does no, I'm just kidding.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like and whatever literature it is that you have in common, if you ask them about it, they'll give you their commentary on it sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I asked him about the Gospels. And he said the Gospels are Christianity. And I was like, yeah, so they're Christian. And he was like, no, you misunderstand. The Gospels are Christianity. Christianity isn't like people have a lot of notions about what they think Jesus was like, what they think, and some people think that they still speak to Jesus and all these different ideas. But he said the Gospels are Christianity. Like all of Christianity comes from these 4 books. And like, you know, so he starts to get into like, well, sometimes people like try to read the Bible from the Old Testament to the New Testament, but they're missing the point of the Christian Bible, because the Christian Bible is just like the New Testament is the core of Christianity, and that everything else like spreads from it. Right. But my point is that he said the Gospels are the core of Christian folklore. In other words, the characters from the New Testament were what inspired the saints, not these historical people, the characters that are produced, that are expressed in this literature, right? The folklore is what built the religion. And so, and it really struck a deep chord with me that folklore is actually, you know, that like even if you're an exoteric only Orthodox Christian, that folklore is critically important to your religion. And I think that a lot of that folkloric generation, the generation of folklore is still ongoing, you know. And then it's happening in the fringes. It's happening in the, you know, it's happening in a way, Commander Aquarians.
In a way, Ron Watkins with his QAnon was a little bit like Constantine.
I see. I think I'm with you.
No, I mean, you know, just as far as like taking every fringe conspiracy theory and idea and then trying to like weave them all into one thing. I guess
them all together and monetize.
Yeah, that wasn't really Constantine exactly, but I thought it'd be a fun reference to make. I guess it's more like the early Christians kind of putting together, okay, we'll take this wreath from the Nordics and this from here and this from the Greeks and this from the, you know, and make the traditions around Christianity that have nothing to do with the gospel or even the Acts or anything. So similarly, and it kind of gives it a bad name, actually, because my dad, being a conspiracy theorist, used to be kind of cool. It used to be cool. I hate, you know, in the 80s, conspiracy theorists, like, I mean, they weren't all on meth because they were all on crack. No, I mean, like it was the 80s. Like it was pretty cool. It was a little edgy. You could be a normal person and then like, you know, hey, let's go out and have a couple of drinks. Let me tell you what I heard about the pyramid on Mars. You know, that face is half.
Yeah, I totally remember that. There's still like sections of the bookstore that are dedicated to that form of conspiracy theory. Yeah. Like like whenever you find like the shelf that has like "Behold a Pale Horse" on it, there's still that. Yeah, there's still that military industrial complex style conspiracy.
But then now it's gotten organized and weaponized, you know, like it's so weird that there's actually politicians that kind of like hail it as their religion, you know, and that it actually is like you have to consider, well, it's not me. I don't have to consider them so much. I mean, some of my viewers are into QAnon and stuff, but there are a few people that I'm aware of. They think maybe I don't see them, but they're totally into anti-vax, totally into QAnon, and clicking heart on all my posts. And I'm very much not coming from that position. And it's nice that they're willing to let me be part of their party, even though I don't subscribe to the pudding. I won't say Kool-Aid because that's sort of disrespectful to the people who died.
That has certain connotations.
Yeah. But Anyway, I did it again. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, you don't have to eat the pudding to
Right.
appreciate the pudding.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know. I think it's a great idea.
And when yeah, when someone comes up with, like, for example, when anti-Semitism, flares up and becomes popular again, it seemed like, when we were growing up, maybe I wasn't in the right neighborhoods to see it, but it seemed like anti-Semitism was something from the history books, that it used to be everywhere, and then there was Hitler, and everybody realized, oh my God, anti-Semitism is bad.
It's a bad idea.
And now we all know that nobody likes the Nazis, and then 20 years later, why are you wearing a Nazi flag? And then suddenly it's very, very, that people are talking about Rothschild again and stuff, so I mean, yeah, as far as that goes, like when it actually manifests in physical violence, when people get, like that Pizzagate guy, the guy that came in and shot all the people at the pizza, like that's when it gets, I don't know what the word is, scary, dark, ugly, but inevitable, I guess, when you have like, 20,000 people all in this shared fantasy, and then you have people that are kind of mentally unstable and actually looking for a reason to go shoot a bunch of people.
Right.
Then these things don't mix well, So
it surprises me just how, I don't know how to put it. I mean, like, it surprises me that the last 20 years have become so dark, that because I'm like you, like I remember a time when, like, conspiracy theories were something delightful that was passed around. That was like passed around, among intellectuals.
Yeah.
And I guess like saying that, like, it was almost like inherently, at the time, it was inherently harmless, like the people who had the conspiracy theories, their intent was discovery and joy. Sometimes maybe not joy, but definitely always discovery, always like this, always this seeking the truth. And it just became more and more paranoid. Until it's not necessarily about truth at all anymore.
And then
I guess, like, if
it adopted a lot of the same in the QAnon, it adopted a lot of the same terminology and structure as evangelical American Christianity. The Great Awakening was an 1800s thing in the evangelical, talking about the Book of Revelation and the fear. The classic cult thing of, I love you so much and you better, like the fear and comforting at the same time, like God loves you and you're going to go to hell, unless you go to church because God loves you. Sort of like we need to, like if you don't acknowledge that the pedophiles are, like sort of that QAnon sort of us or them mentality that they kind of fall into, that it kind of falls apart upon scrutiny. They think they're winning the argument until they're actually a congressperson, and the rest of Congress is like looking at them going, okay, here's why everything you say is totally batshit. Like it was kind of nice to watch that. But anyway, I don't know. It's a weird world. But the darkness, I found all of these. I found out when in 1999, I was so starry-eyed about the internet. I thought that it was going to solve all the problems of the world, and but I mean, and I also kind of like, well, there'll probably be some bad things that come with it too. And the thing was, I had it backwards, like there's going to be a shitload of bad things that come with it and unexpected things, and there's some good stuff too. I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation in real time, the fact that Uber, I mean, not to say that give the gig economy, that's not necessarily a step forward, but yeah, I mean, the GPS being so accurate that you can have something like Uber exist, or that we can, I mean, this is almost real time. I think there's a maybe 1 second delay, but it's amazing, and so there are definitely positive things, and people can, I think what it is, what just to put it very simply, is people who used to be the only weirdo in their school can connect with 20,000 other people just like them, whether they're into My Little Pony or swastikas, the good kind or the bad kind, there is the double-edged sword is like the incels, like all these different phenomena that keep coming up and then occasionally getting violent. And then I judge them to be evil because of the violence, because by their fruits shall ye know them. And that doesn't apply to the Christian. No. Yeah, I don't know. It's like the sheer number. How many people get violent based on that particular form of nationalism? It's like, is it worse or better than, I don't know. I remember my mom telling me that back in the day when the Red Scare was, when everybody was, on the marching to the same drum, McCarthy was the Korean War. McCarthy was the communist guy. McCarthy was the communist guy, the anti-communist guy, the Euro-communist guy. And so my mom is sitting at the table with her dad, was saying, Jesus wanted people to help the poor, right? Well, yeah. Didn't Jesus say it's better that it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven? Yeah. Doesn't he sound a lot like Karl Marx? And her dad was like, no, those are totally different. But she was just kind of poking, like just to see what he'd say, But yeah, that those boomers getting on the nerves of the greatest generation. Different time. The young boomers. Teenage boomers. Good times.
So I have I would love to co-host some of these.
I
don't know how many, but I think it would be great fun.
Yeah, sometimes I do more, sometimes I do less. If you have anyone in mind, or any organization that would be interesting to look at, I'm open. I'm open to whatever,
Okay. I have so there's this. Oh, I'll send you more information later.
Yeah. And for the people watching, listening, you're hearing this, get in touch with us if you would, are running a small, fringe, religious organization out of your basement. Give us a call. Let's see what you're doing. Like if you're writing,
we want to hear your story.
Yeah, if you're writing your manifesto or whatever it is, whichever camp you're coming from. There might be some cases where we'd be like, oh, we don't really want to interview people who actually sacrifice human babies. So we might discover some lines that we don't want to cross. But other than
I have a feeling that probably we're going to have like some dark interviews, but I mean, like, it's going to come. I feel like it's going to come with the territory.
Yeah. There's a few episodes back where a guy's talking about how he likes to offer rum and tobacco to old Civil War soldiers because they're really good at following orders. He was talking about old soldiers, and then I made the leap to Civil War. But yeah, like talking about using necromancy, classic raising of the dead to do your bidding. So yeah, and I'm like, how did I end up interviewing this guy? He was someone recommended him, but I was being some kind of purist. I was being like, no, I want every guest on the Esoterinerd to be an intelligent, person who's good,
a person of moral uprightness,
high moral character. Yeah. But
Well, I am sure that we will have a variety of wonderful guests.
Yeah, that sounds good. A new era of Esoterinerd.
Yeah. Esoterinerd 2.
Yeah.
Now there's 2 of them.
We're in the 100s. So it's the first few were, this was a gift from, I think she was episode 6, Saori. her parents made this. So if anybody's
okay.
wondering about, it's a traditional kimono. But it looks a little bit like the chief adept robes, so I like to, kind of.
It totally does.
This thing.
And I actually prefer the. What's that?
Or the premonstrator.
Oh, that was made by a premonstrator?
No. During the equinox, when everybody has to leave the room, and then the premonstrator puts the rose cross on, the premonstrator is wearing a blue robe. So this is either chief adept or premonstrator during the little 5-minute part in the middle of the equinox. Sorry,
I mean, it's pretty good for what you're doing in either case, right?
Yeah, I like it, and it's got that Eastern Western thing, I like what you got going on.
It's not black or white.
That's true.
What's that?
It's the same color as.
Oh yeah. It's all the layers, the deeper and deeper layers.
And Thomas and the Wolf. For those nobody's picked up on, there's so many little things for people to discover, and nobody's discovering them. Nobody. There's thousands. There's so many layers.
No.
So Thomas and the Wolf. What does it make you think of? Right. It reminds you that there was an orchestral thing. This is the flute.
It makes me think of
flute.
It makes me think of Peter and the Wolf.
Yes, and the very first thing that Thomas says in Thomas and the Wolf is, "For Pete's sake." Nobody got it. Nobody.
Oh wow!
The first words out of his mouth are "For Pete's sake."
So my when my dictionary was published, I had all these anxieties, and I had all this excitement because I was like, people are going to read this, people who have read the original French, and they're going to criticize my translation, right? And I was like, well, I don't want them to criticize this, but I'm ready for them to do it, and I'm ready to make the second edition and make the improvements that they suggest.
Right. Yeah.
Not a word. Not a one. And that was completely baseless anxiety. I have one person on Facebook who's contacted me regarding the dictionary. She's brilliant. We definitely need to interview her.
Okay.
Not because she's a fan, but because she's brilliant in her own right. But out of all the dictionaries that were sold, one contact.
I remember when I was a kid and I was teaching at the sanctuary, I used to complain to Gordon because I had the the disease. I inherited the disease that was sort of in the Golden Dawn group that we came from. And one aspect of it was I was hungry to have 100 students, 1,000 students. I wanted to build a temple. I wanted to buy the Scottish Rite place on Wilshire and have that be the place where I teach. And yet only 5 or 6 people, 4 to 6 people were coming to my house every Friday. And I was teaching 4 to 6 people every Friday consistently for years, or for months. And Gordon, he heard me complaining, and he looked at me and he said, a human being is an entire universe. You can't count heads. You're counting heads and then taking a loss because of accounting, and just ignoring the fact that you have 6 whole universes in front of you, and you get to teach them, and it changed my perspective. He helped me to see better about that. So yeah, you got that one person. That's great. That's an entire.
Well, right, exactly.
Universe.
Yeah. Instead of complaining that you don't have hundreds of people who are corresponding with you.
Yeah.
You got the one.
Yeah.
And
it's annoying having hundreds. Oh, I don't recommend having hundreds of people corresponding with you. It sucks. Having 5 people sucks. One is a good number. Right. 1 or 3, but hundreds. I've done that. It's very stressful. I remember one time I was driving down the freeway and I got a phone call, and Todd was sitting next to me. I picked it up and I was like, "Hello? Oh, right. Yeah, that was today. Sure. Yeah, I'm ready for the test." And I'm like driving along. I'm like, "Okay, so tell me about the tool you made in this grade," because I have no idea what grade they're in. And okay, and then I add, oh, they're Theuricus. Okay, they made a dagger. Okay, so how's your body of light? All right. Well, it sounds like you know your stuff. Just shoot me an email, and if you could just spell out your full name and your Latin motto in the email, and and I hang up the phone, and Todd's like, "You are a terrible proctor." I was like, I wasn't that bad. I just had hundreds of students, literally.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That could be.
Yeah, I remember that.
Bad.
Just I never had hundreds. I had dozens.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. It was like you were just working as a teacher in basically a formal school. Like, people would come to you and you don't necessarily remember who they are because you haven't heard from them in 2 years or something. And but they have had a recent revelation that they would like to discuss with you. And so, okay, well, you get to go have that discussion. I think, honestly, I think that being a proctor taught me a lot about accepting a lot of different perspectives. Just because, like, I was the same way. I would get that phone call sometimes where I wouldn't even really know who I was talking to. And but it kind of forces you into a neutral frame of mind. Where okay, well, it's like you have to figure out, like, okay, where are they grade wise? What, and then of course, like our particular school was like levels of secrecy, right? And you had to navigate that secrecy all the time. The time. It was like working. It was like working for like 70% school and 30% intelligence agency. Where like you had to determine like the level of secrecy that this person was at. And in some ways that secrecy was like horrible, but in other ways it was useful sometimes.
And it's really weird. I mean, it's a thing that has been given to me by my own actions in this life, that I have a memory of before Edward Snowden did his thing. When was he? Was that 2015 or 13 or? Well, anyway.
Was it that late? I was going to say
maybe it was earlier. Maybe it was earlier.
Like mid-2000s.
But before he did that, when people would leave the order and publish personal correspondences between people that were in a group conversation, but a group conversation that was supposed to be secret, and then they would post them on Alt Magic or something. And then we would get the call, and we would all meet at the temple and do some kind of really terrible dark Martian magic attack on them. And and that's exactly what the conspiracy theorists are paranoid about the government doing. When someone like Edward Snowden blows the whistle. And so yeah, I mean, I guess that definitely can make one humble. When I was 17. I thought that I could do no wrong, but now I can look back and see great wrong, And at the time, what was I doing? I was following orders, I was, I was, my whole social network was built on the back of an oath that if I got kicked out at that time, that meant other people weren't allowed to talk to me. That meant my whole, I mean, it's like, so there's some voodoo stuff like that in Brazil that I've read about. I don't have direct experience of that, but it's the same kind of thing where if you do something wrong, you break one of the rules, you look at someone the wrong way, that kind of thing, especially the head guy, then you find yourself like in a biblical way as the outcast from the community, where people that were your best friend and your sister and your lover, aren't speaking to you in such a cold way, and they think that you have gotten possessed, and they're the one doing the black magic on you. It's like so fucked. I mean, by they, I mean me. I was on the other side of that. I was on both. When I left gracefully. So I don't think anybody was doing any attack magic on me, but I did participate in a lot of that dark shit, sending clepothic energies by name, in the name of God, from inside of a Solomonic circle to go into the minds of people who were related to the people that were in our order, you know, people that were blood relatives and people that were former husbands and wives. And I think I've alluded to this, but this is the first time I'm really pouring out about it on the podcast and it was kind of part of the motivation for creating the podcast, is sort of a lot of these weird unresolved issues. And what do you do when you find out that you're the bad guy, you know?
No, absolutely. Yes. You and I share, you know, I don't know why I didn't think that this would come out, but like you and I share a lot of the same traumas, you know, a lot of the same, like this, just a lot of the same, like just fucked up things. Like, I mean, you know, you left gracefully. You left gracefully. I left like I left like I fell out the window.
A thief in the night.
A thief in the night.
I raged against the guy we call Voldemort here on the podcast quite a lot. But then he split from you know, the guy that was running ISIS, TDL. And so it was an order headed by TDL that I left gracefully. I don't think it's possible to leave an order headed by Voldemort gracefully. You have to leave like a thief in the night. And you know,
you have to either leave like a thief in the night, or you leave by like slaughtering those around you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I am happy to speak about things like this. In fact, I'm glad that we are, and I hope that we do more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we will.
Oh, so much emotion. There's just so much emotion about the whole thing, right? It was a big part of our lives.
Yeah.
We were each other's family. We were each other's colleagues, each other's associates, you know. It all went to hell. It all went to heaven. It just it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, such a contrast between, and it's interesting because obviously there's not a lot of Golden Dawn, you know, in the world, but there's other organizations with similar dynamics where there's, like, for example, in Vajrayana, in the Shambhalaya, there's secrecy, you know, and you're supposed to do what your teacher says. And so those, you know, secrecy plus do what your teacher says means that if you're blowing the whistle, then you're the bad guy by definition, you know. And that's sort of a little bit like what our situation was. And so, you know, when I was young, I smelled the incense from a Tibetan temple, and I saw the beautiful art and heard the chanting and the bells, and I just thought it was nothing but beauty. And it turns out it's not, you know. It also has darkness. It turns out it's human, you know. It turns out not only is it human, but you can find hierarchical structures with real creeps at the top, just like in the West. You know. So you know, then that's nice, because then I can reflect on my own experience in Golden Dawn and compare it with an experience that I'm hearing about from someone else who had those issues with in Tibetan Buddhist cults, and you know, and feel like I'm not so alone, and feel like the experience I had was something of a universal human experience, though not one that everybody gets to experience. And it definitely taught me a lot. I mean, I am definitely allergic to cults in my present, as far as my own interaction with them. Like, they can exist, that's fine. But you know, someone invites me to one, the second time I won't go, just the first time, maybe, you know, like I'll go check it out, but I'm not coming weekly. You know what I mean? Like,
I do.
Even someone asked me if I wanted to participate in a Dungeons and Dragons, you know, a Zoom on a scheduled basis. And I was like, like that's too much like sounds too much like a cult to me, like, but yet I bought all the Dungeons and Dragons stuff and I'm aching to play, but someone's like, oh great, let's play on Tuesdays. I'm like, scheduling is bad for me.
Yeah. I actually over the pandemic I started to play Dungeons and Dragons with my family.
Oh, good.
So it's like yeah, but it's totally a family thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's there's a lot of like family dynamics built into it, but it's a lot of fun.
How fun. Yeah. I got all this stuff and I started reading the books and everything, but I think it really helped me with writing, actually. Like a lot of the things that felt like wasting time, like the years that I spent watching YouTube and keeping up on all the politics and BS going on in America, I was like, why am I wasting my energy on this? And then, but then when I got into Dungeons and Dragons, I was like, I'm enjoying this. And I started to realize the story, the potential, like when someone learns to play or learns to be a DM, they're also learning to be a writer and a director, like you can basically go directly from DM to Netflix, or theater, it's like really, or Golden Dawn even, like there's so much crossover. And so I think like learning about and thinking about all the different possible dynamics and the dice, and it frees up a certain part of the mind that allowed me to finally write a book, write a cohesive thing, a story. And and I should give a shout out to Dan Harmon's story circle. I enjoy that. He took the Carl Jung's, or no, what's his name? Joseph Campbell's Here with a Thousand Faces, how he broke down that the basic structure of every heroic myth. And then Robert McKee took that and made a story. So to show the basic structure of every heroic myth that's in every 22-minute, piece of crap that they put on television, And so now everybody's very intentionally telling the same story arc that's in Oedipus Rex and Antigone, but the 22-minute version, and every single one, it's like, oh, there's the underdog, okay. Oh, he's call to adventure. That's good. Okay, here's the unexpected. Okay, here's the third act surprise, and okay, now he's returning home having changed. It's like, okay, what do I want to watch again? Okay, oh, there's the underdog. Oh, here's the inciting incident. Call to adventure. It's like, maybe I should just like meditate or something, do bonsai or something, like, I don't know if I should keep rerunning these ancient Greek things. I mean, Thespis was an oath breaker,
Thespis was an, oh, right.
Yeah. When they brought him up to the mountaintop and the gods shouted at him, and then he was like, I'm going to do this at the Colosseum. He's a fucking Thelemite. Oath breaker. The Judean People's Front. We're the People's Front of Judea. Splinter. Anyway, should we wind up? I think we've been talking for 4 hours or something. I don't even know.
Yeah, we've been going a while now.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Sure.
Really glad to get back in touch. I don't think I'm going to edit this. I'm going to leave.
No,
I'm going to leave it raw. Leave it raw. I don't think there's anything to. There might be a couple parts where I look foolish, but nothing where I said anything too terrible or outed anybody too much. I don't think
that there's anything forbidden that I brought up, or I don't feel like too much of a. I don't feel like I presented myself badly.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Not too much like an idiot. Maybe just 78 or 80%. That's fine.
You've popped into my mind very often over the years, and I've always kind of felt ever since. I mean, back then I stayed in when you left. So there was at that time psychologically and whatever the dynamics were, I wasn't in a place where I was going to write to you. Isn't that fucked up? someone that's such a close friend and a brother, and then
I know. I totally understand. I really do. Because I didn't either.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't either, because I knew that that's where everybody's head was.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where my head was. And I had no idea what I was doing. You know, I mean, it took it.
Well, you were in the crucible.
It took a tremendous amount for me to leave in the first place.
That trip to Washington will do it.
Yes. Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
Especially if you have to stay there. Jesus. Oh, I can't even imagine what that was like.
I honestly, I would still love to. I mean, it's like in some ways, I would love to touch base with a lot of the characters that I met there. You know.
Yeah. Well, some of them are watching you right now. Anyone you want to say hello to? Maybe first names or
Oh man, I have to think back to all that time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
One more time.
It was 2002, right? When you left, or was it 01? Yeah, 02. Yeah, okay.
Have I blocked? I haven't blocked their names. I just haven't followed them along.
Yeah.
Sabrina, I think was someone.
There was a certain overweight former Jehovah's Witness who had a green car that you probably would remember from Washington.
Yes, I remember him.
Yeah. Cool guy, actually.
His name comes to mind.
Callio.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss that guy.
Yeah. There were the kids up in Vancouver that are still the kids up in Vancouver, but their temple has a different affiliation. I won't say any more about that. But
you know, it's funny.
Recommend
the one group of people that I would love to touch base with again the most. I shouldn't say that, should I? Because there's a lot of groups of people.
No, it's all right. Yeah.
But like the people that consistently, I always had a warm place in my heart for the kids in Vancouver.
Oh yeah. You know, I'm sure one of them is watching this.
I don't think. Sure. I think everybody with everybody else, we were all like sort of like battle weary. And we were like, and we were all like sort of cynical and tired.
Yeah.
But the
they
kids
were
in Vancouver,
zealots. They had their own thing going. I think because of Memdu Al-Day, Nineveh Shadrach, the founder of that temple, he was a zealot. He was the real thing. I mean, he was, as far as he wanted to build an occult order and do it in a very fascist way. And I mean that in only the best possible way. I don't, what I'm saying is he didn't have his ego in it. He just said, let's using a very militaristic style, build an intense cult order. I mean, that was just if you're watching this, Nineveh, I don't mean to insult you at all. I'm just being an ass here. But what I mean to say is that the temple you started, sir, had a different current, had a different energy, and it was desirable as compared to the Temple of Isis down in California. There was a certain something in Vancouver, something in the water up there that made it very special.
There's a combination of love and nurturing, and I don't know, they consistently put their best foot forward. And I don't know, I was always.
Plus, there were French people there.
I was always treated very well. And the best parts of myself always got to come out whenever the Vancouver kids were involved.
Yeah. And then, what was that? Jesus of Montreal, the guy who plays Jesus, the actor, looks just like Marcel. So I always enjoyed that.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I thought it was him at first.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, my computer is getting ready to pass away.
I thought you were going to say your wife is being impatient. Remember we were texting for like 6 hours yesterday, and and I was she knew about you already, actually, and so I was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was glad that we were talking,
I'm glad that we're talking to you.
Yeah. Well, our first conversation in 16 years, of course, it's going to be 5 hours. So.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's spread it out into several 3-hour conversations.
Yes.
How about that?
Yes, let's do it. Sounds good. And then I'll let you know if I see any wacky characters that we might interview together. Sometimes I do co-host with Robbie. Maybe the three of us could do a conversation sometime. But yeah, I mean, as far as like very fringe and interesting and unusual egregores, that we could make that our kind of our mission statement, as you know, like when the ones you co-host, we'll try and get, you know, people maybe we knew, that'd be nice, or people that are coming from a really bizarre background. And those Vancouver kids, I've asked them, they won't come on my podcast. Fred or RC's been on 3 or 4 times, I think, but but the others, you know, they just want to keep a low profile. But there's some others that that aren't from our group, but they have a relationship with the people that used to be from our group up in Canada, and they're called the Thuban Temple, and I interviewed them a while back. They're very interesting. Thuban being the north, something in the north. Is it the North Star? I think because they're in Canada, you know. So, but they're trying to put together like a ragtag. Like a union of Golden Dawn orders that aren't the Ciceros or Griffin or Zinc, like so all the other or you know the other ones, is so that if you're from that fringe order in the garage, then you can come to an initiation at my fringe order in my garage, because we all agree on basic tenets and none of us are affiliated with the Ciceros. So that's a kind of interesting mission statement they've got going on. I mean, it's always sort of the subtext.
That is pretty cool.
And I'm putting it in a very loose way. And I don't mean to talk badly about anybody. I'm just being an ass up here. So anyway.
Okay. Okay. On that note, I gotta run.
Okay, brother. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Thanks, Edward. Of course. Talk again soon.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Joseph Zabinski, for being our guest tonight on the Esoterinerd podcast. And thank you, as always, to Susumu Ueda and his father and the other monks at Jofuku-in for the music you're hearing right now. Thank you to Camille and Kennerly for the harp music that you heard at the beginning and end of the interview itself. And if you don't mind staying to the end, if you want to hear a little bit more about this, I have a pitch that I can put at the end here, and just check it out. Amazon.com, Thomas and the Wolf. It's worth it. I promise, it's worth it. And also Transformations, and the Mytho-Hermetic Dictionary that our guest wrote. And is there anything else? I guess we'll cut to the outro stuff, the stuff about Thomas and the Wolf. Again, thank you all for tuning in to Esoterinerd podcast tonight. And until next time. Hello, and welcome back to those who know me and to those who don't. It's very nice to meet you. I'm Edward Reib. Today, I published my first book, Thomas and the Wolf. It's not very thick, as you can see. Actually, this is a piece of paper. I don't have a hard copy of it myself, and I'm going to have to wait a few weeks because I live in India. And but you can probably get it in 4 to 5 days if you're in US or Canada or UK or any place like that. Thomas is active on what has come to be known as LeftTube. In other words, he's a YouTuber who derives their sense of mission and purpose from directly addressing falsehoods and this sort of thing on the right side of the political spectrum, generally speaking, whether that be politicians or other YouTubers on the other side of the spectrum. The Wolf he's not exactly the QAnon shaman, but let's just say that this book takes place in an alternate, sort of a stylized fictional universe, heavily based on 2019 United States of America. And in that universe, he wears a wolf headdress instead of a buffalo headdress, and he's a little bit of a different guy. But so that's the two main characters here. I'm taking a risk with my hair. I know I usually do something with it. It's still in that awkward in-between phase where it's not long yet. But anyway, so this book is a tale of these two very interesting and very different Americans, very different characters, and it tells a tale of how they met and what happened, what they discovered. There was something unexpected, and how they became partners in crime. I hope you enjoy it, and please do leave a review on Amazon. I wrote it in the spirit of hoping that it could help, you know, a little help each of us to be able to see the other as a bit more human, and that's all. If you're at all hesitant, then what I recommend is, you know, get the Kindle one. And even if you don't have a Kindle, there's a free app you can download on your phone. You can read it. It's 50 pages. It's a quick read. And then if you dig it, then, you know, pick up a paperback copy. If you know me, then you know that you can trust me when I say just get the paperback. You won't regret it. Thank you for watching this video. The link to the book is in the description. Until next time.